Are we joining the other meeting?
Oh, there's Andy.
Oh, admit.
Oh, Andy.
It's so weird that the way it.
Right.
Oh, no. Are you there, Andy?
I'm here.
Yay, he made it.
Made it. Sort of.
Cool. So now we'll head into that. So we're all here with quorum. You just added one more. Peter's absent. I don't know if you can see us.
Yes, I can.
There you go.
I don't know if you want to see me though.
Well, I'm not gonna argue with you. You don't want to be seen, that's your choice.
Yeah.
We're just reviewing the minutes, which there really wasn't a lot. Well, no, not a lot there. We just worked a lot of changes last time. So any changes in the minutes from previous meeting?
Can you make sure to approve the agenda?
Oh, I lied.
Or just
I told you, you just, people keep throwing things at me. I screwed up. So backing up, agenda. You read the agenda, it contains the minutes. It also contains resolution I asked for because I want to discuss continuing this because I don't feel like we got some things done that I want. It's me once, but a lot of people want, and especially like some parking lot stuff and just some things that I just would feel bad not getting done.
Yeah.
And we have some momentum. So basically resolution says, review it, make sure it says that we will just continue as the same body and get a couple more meetings and get this done and get it over with. But I think we made lots of progress last month. And get this thing. So we'll discuss that. It's time, but any other changes to suggestions on the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. Any opposition to approving the agenda? It's no. So now we're approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Any changes to the minutes of the previous meeting?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Any objections to approving the minutes? Carries. All right. On to the resolution. I'm gonna go ahead and read it out loud. It makes sense to me. So whereas planning commission approved resolution serial number, read that. Recommending the city council landscape standards review committee, and whereas the city council approved resolution establishing the landscape standards review committee for a term of 6 months, and whereas the committee has met regularly in the past 5 months to review the landscaping standards code, blah, blah, blah. Whereas the committee needs additional time to complete their review of this chapter entirely, therefore be it resolved, the landscape standards review committee requests the city council amend resolution serial number 2204 to revise the approved term from 6 to 12 months. So, and my look is legal. The only thing we'd have to. Yeah, I'm done talking.
Can we have some discussion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, technically, you need a
Actually,
motion first.
move to approve and then we can
Maybe
discuss.
a second and then discuss them.
Then we vote rush it down.
Make a motion to approve resolution serial number 22-01. Resolution of the Wasilla Landscape Standard Committee to increase.
No.
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 Any second? I'll second it. Discussion. You want to talk? first?
Yeah.
Go.
So I just want to, we're putting a lot of time and energy in, and then this is a proposal. So just wondered what that looks like,
Yes.
is this worth,
So the process, okay, but what looks like. So I feel like clarify your question before you. I'm gonna run my,
So this
I'm not even gonna answer your question. I'm gonna
So
just,
this is like a suggestion.
this is a formal request from us to the city council for more time. They
Oh,
have,
no,
You're
no,
talking-
I'm
she's talking
sorry.
about
The purpose of what we're doing.
right,
This is a,
so
Recommendation.
it is
to the
a
planning commission.
recommendation, but it carries a lot of weight because they said, oh, please, somebody take some time to rewrite this.
Yes.
And they put together a team of people that have a clue And, well, you do too.
Yeah.
We all have a different
I'm having
perspective.
breathe here, but
Yes,
yeah,
you have to live in
Representing
it.
the citizen perspective.
yeah.
You have to live in it. I have to
Yeah.
work in it. They,
We
I
gotta
work
build- we
within
gotta
it. They work on it. So we'll
Develop it.
work here.
Right, I just want to make sure that we're doing this for, other than them to say, okay, nice work, guys, but anyway, what we really want to do is this.
That is one of the
Mhm.
risks. And if they were to go that far to do that, this would be the last landscape or last committee of this type
But they never
that they will get
Yeah.
in 10 years. Because it happened a while back. And that's the last time it's happened.
Gotcha, so this
So-
is a new effort to,
If they truly, my opinion, since we're in discussion, if they truly, really want the landscape code cleaned up, they'll listen to it.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean they won't tinker with it.
Sure,
That's their prerogative. But I think they'll listen, especially if a couple of us show up and present it and say, there you go. This has been our process. This is why we did something. If you want
gotcha,
to question us, question away.
Well, the council made it clear too that the different twists that they took on this one is typically, I mean, although they get the materials, it would go to the planning commission. Your recommendations would go to the planning commission. Although it would go in the packet to the city council, the focus would be more on what the planning commission said. But the council said they specifically, even if the planning commission differed from yours, they wanted to see both recommendations. Meaning they weren't gonna let the planning commission or staff supplant your recommendations out of this committee. They wanted to see them in their entirety. And then, as the chair says, they can amend them or revise them as they feel they need to.
So it
What
could
they
be,
have to do is agree.
it could be a mixture of planning commission changes and council changes. Or the council comes back to what we had and change that.
Right.
okay.
So Tina, does the city have a process where they review the code every 5 years, or is it just whenever it becomes a
It's not
concern?
mandated for Title 16. Comp plan's not even mandated, but typical is either 5 or 10 years, depending on the amount of change that's occurred. So we're working on the comp plan, probably starting next year, but
If there was that, totally would do.
yeah, but there's not a regular, like every 2 years, we review it. It's on a as needed basis as it comes to light that something's out of date, either from staff, administration, the public, whoever.
So then when you get projects and you see these issues that come up, because I always say code is a living, breathing document, and it's always gonna have to change because situations come up. So do you make notes about things that come up and then?
Yeah, if you see my code, I've got actually an older one than the one I have right now. It's got all kinds of notes in the margin and attachments, things that have come up, emails that I received from people. If it's something that seems, yeah, there's a level of judgment, but I mean, it's all compiled, and then the next time we're starting on a project, we'll take that into consideration, but
And you keep a running tally of that
it's not that formal. But yes.
as best as you
There's a
can.
compilation folder of all the, I won't say that I get that many suggestions, to be honest, I don't. The landscaping, other than the flowers and occasionally the height. The flowers was the deal killer for pretty much everybody. I mean, and I agree with that. I mean, that was something that was tested. It doesn't work. It's not needed. We're gonna move past that. But other than that, really not a lot of feedback. I don't get a lot of specific feedback on particular codes. Parking downtown is now becoming an issue, but I don't know that it's an issue so much as it's just gotta be resolved. How much is reasonable for on-site and how much can you rely on public parking lots and street parking? And then you gotta decide, do you have enough of that so they don't start encroaching on private property? So, yeah, so that's the other.
Change somewhat when the public.
Unfortunately not, we're not getting our own street
Oh,
parking.
not, okay, that's, yeah, I was gonna say the last design I saw showed.
It was supposed to have it, but they wouldn't, the property owners wouldn't give up the driveways. So the line of sight wouldn't be maintained, even though they're losing a whole row of parking.
Right,
They
right.
still made their decision was the driveway was more important.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought free paved, maintained parking. Bring business would go up, but
Mhm.
yeah,
But you know what happened? But Kevin, 5 to 10 years, we'll be back asking for it.
That's,
When I was growing up, that when they're trying to route the Parks Highway around Wasilla, oh no, you'll kill us, you'll kill us, you'll kill us. And now they're going, oh, well, what happened? Yeah, you did it to yourselves.
yeah.
It's like the river moved it out. That killed them all. They're just as busy as ever.
Well, and there's different mentalities from 10 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you have the people who had experiences in the 90s and the 80s planning
mhm.
that are making decisions in the early 2000s. And so,
And the property
Yeah.
owners and everything
right,
else.
and everything's changing. So in 10 years, the whole mindset's.
Serious.
Problem is, it's such a huge infrastructure undertaking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so expensive, and
Decision you live with now, so it's were made
Yeah.
4 years ago.
that's gonna be the hard part. I mean, I get both sides. I do see both sides, so I'm not trying to be negative about it, but it's just like,
Sometimes you have to be willing to be the bad guy and say, well,
This is what's best for the community. This is what's safest.
yeah, but DOT won't do that.
Right.
They say they can't do that, so.
They can't go against public opinion.
They can condemn it, but it would delay the project by about 4 to 5 more years as they go through eminent domain. And so it's
So
already
really
been
nice.
delayed so long.
yeah, it is.
Mm.
So back to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Little sidebar there, but
So I asked because I felt like we had some momentum still. I think most people at this table still have things that they want to see. I have a pretty distinct feeling that Andy's got some parking lot suggestions for us. And I still have some things that I want to discuss, see what people think. And perhaps there's some others finding other places. I think a lot of Peter's input last time was helpful in terms of just simplifying things, excuse me.
and I fully anticipate they'll approve the
Oh.
extension. I don't see
I don't
it.
think so, no, but I just couldn't sit here and not ask.
Yeah, and if you get done early, well, then
Right,
get done early.
6 months allows us
Some
to
wiggle
continue
room.
to work. But if we finish in February, we're like, peace, we're done. Happy about that. I don't want to use up any more of my time than I have to. But I just,
Yeah, no, I.
everybody's time, I just felt like if we don't close that loop,
Yep.
we wasted a lot of valuable time.
Yeah, you're so close,
And
so
I'm
close.
not
Well, and I
happy
think
about
we've gone through a lot of the work. We've done a
Yes.
lot of discussions. Now we're actually going, okay, we've
It was
discussed the
kind of a-
issues. What do we need to change in the text to make it?
that. Exactly. We've talked about what looks good. Now, how do we make it read so that happens?
Now, the result of this with timing is you won't be able to have a meeting in December.
I'm
Oh, yeah, I know. Oh, I'm
Back in
sorry.
January.
So January would be the soonest we get you up and running. And there was a recommendation that was forwarded to me. I don't know if it came from I think it came from the council and or the mayor to consider doing a night that's not the city council
I would
meeting.
agree.
So what I had proposed, I don't think we have next year up there, but we could go to the third Monday of the month, if that works. We could keep it Monday because that's at the same time, but go to the third.
Mondays work for me.
And then that would be between their 2 meetings.
So January 16th.
And then we would roll from there.
Smart.
Martin Luther King.
We're not closed for that.
We're not.
St.
I'm
Paul is
okay with
not.
that. It is, I mean, it doesn't bother me, but if things are closed,
January 16th?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, so then we would just keep going the third Monday.
And then the February 20th is a holiday.
Oh, that was
President's
President's
Day.
Day, so we would be closed that one. So we could,
Well, it would either be the 13th. Is that a council day?
yeah, it is. They're the second. We could go with maybe.
What about the
That's
the Tuesday,
Yeah, the
no,
21st.
24th?
So my
February
problem
21st.
Tuesday is I work until at least 6:30.
So they are,
Wednesdays I'm available I mean, I can make pretty much any Wednesday
Don't
work.
work for me.
How
Yeah.
about Thursday, February
It's a
23rd?
little bit of a close one, but why not the 6th? Still Monday.
yeah, you could do that.
The first Monday of the month.
February
First
6th.
Monday.
I can do that.
Okay, so let's see.
The first Monday instead of the
So
third.
just on
1/16
February.
and 2/6, and then we'd roll back
just for
to,
So
Yeah.
just February.
Well,
So that'd
and
be
then from
March.
that, we'll decide how close to done we are.
and then March 20th would be the next one.
And
So,
everybody
Or
understand,
January
we're
16th.
not limited to one a month. If we get to February 6th,
Oh, there you go.
we want to meet again real
Let's get
soon.
it done.
We can. We have a time frame to work in. We can have one meeting or 50.
Right.
that's up to us.
Is there an amount of time you need for solicitation of the meeting, like for notice, public notice?
Well, as long as you'd have to, a week, we'd want to get it on, and I think it runs
Yeah.
like,
But if you project,
yeah, you'd
Yeah.
have to just plan it ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're looking to do that. And then the
That's-
clerk just runs an ad every week, so we could update it with the
Yeah,
additional
I'm good with
meetings.
but keep the momentum,
Absolutely.
get the job done strong.
Does March
Sell it to
20
the-
work for everybody though? Can you go that far
Oh.
forward?
Uh,
So it's pretty great.
I
that
know,
is-
is that spring break?
That is, also might be out till that week.
That's so far out in the future, it works for me. I can work around that.
Yeah,
I mean, you can always go with March 6th again,
well, let's,
you know, if that spring break week for anybody or impacts anybody, because you were already doing the February earlier.
yeah,
You could go with the first Monday,
it
but,
doesn't hurt my feelings, but let's pencil it in and stop planning at that point.
okay, all right.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're gonna go 3-6 for now,
Okay.
and then we can change.
So, back to the discussion of the resolution. Anybody have
No, I'm
Yeah,
good
yeah.
now. I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure
I
it was
completely
for a
agree with you.
purpose.
I mean, because
Yeah.
tonight will be the last meeting, we have to have a
That's just
resolution, and we just don't have. No,
I
absolutely.
think there's a lot of things to this, yeah, and I'm happy with progress.
Yeah.
I don't feel like sometimes wasted, but at the end of the day, I feel pretty disappointed.
I would like to try and get something, hopefully get something approved before construction season next year.
Amen, brother.
Mhm.
So that's
So
what we're saying,
we can get
I
our
can
stuff
go
done
and
by March.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
because people start to turn their
Yeah.
April and May, depending on when it's soft enough.
It'd be really good to have all this.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm willing to work as hard as anybody else wants to, so. And yeah, when the ground thaws out, it makes sense for everybody involved, and I don't want to sit in this room with you people again.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it's-
I mean, I like you, I like you, but
But not that much.
I'd much rather be at home with my wife.
We can give you some flowers, you might.
She did bring brownies.
I know.
Yes,
That's right.
she's just not won the gold medal. for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so any objections to the agenda as read?
No,
Or should agenda?
adoption of
The
the
res-
resolution.
Adoption of the resolution as read. Any amendments, any more discussion? Any opposition? So the agenda passes as read.
No, resolutions.
The resolution, thank you. The resolution passes as read.
Just in case anybody ever listens to the audio.
Yes,
Sure.
I already took a few sips.
good, right? Do I need some? Yeah. No, I'll wait till I go. Thank you. Been a challenging several days. So here we are. Gonna get some stuff done.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we need. We need a. I need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to go to committee in the whole.
Any objections? Hearing no objections, we'll go to committee of the whole. Chatter away, folks. I'll get right back. All right,
Here, just in case.
Do we want to go back, and go through the ones that we already, the more minor ones that have been changed at this point?
Well, they haven't been
Yeah.
changed. There are notes at the bottom
Oh,
of the sections is what I ended up doing.
okay, okay.
So I did not, I ran out of time to figure out how to do track changes in another color with another reviewer, so I've still got to work through that. So at the end, you'll just see notes from the October meeting. But I will go in and capture that. You guys don't need to work on that. You'll just have it in your next one. Hardly knew there's a resolution to extend for 6 months. So wasn't as worried.
Yeah.
There you go.
If you sign, that was just all as long as we can read it. So.
okay,
And then one thing we didn't talk about, I think it's in your package. I wouldn't say waste any time on it today, but look at when you're at home and you're working through stuff, and Marie's kind of technical about this kind of stuff. So there was some, it's not clear to, it's not easy to understand. Things aren't organized maybe as well as they should be. So on your package 15 and 16,
Page
there's, yeah, page 15, and page 16, there's the existing outline of that section of the code. That's the meat of all the regulations, the way it is today, and then a proposed clarification and cleanup. So I, at least you have that to start with. Feel free to edit, whatever, but I think it kind of reorganized some things based on the comments. And so it's kind of inserted in between .040 and 050 because it's a index or a outline for that section. So like I said, trying to put the things that related together. We had talked about preserving trees and that kind of stuff and how it was in this section, but it was also in this section. And so I think
Also-
that's at least the first stab at organizing it.
Makes sense as far as like clearing and preservation is kind of the same thing. Then you talk, and then you're going kind of like in the construction sequence,
Mhm.
sort of. That makes sense. I was looking through this today and. Good. As far as order goes.
I think that's the only like real thing. And then, like I said, your notes are there, but you guys are ready to hit the ground on substantive stuff, starting on 050, I think in 060 is where you were gonna come back. We'd hit all the minor stuff.
So, minor stuff. Anybody explain to me the value of a split rail fence? I can't. Yes,
Like
I
the
think they fall.
aesthetics or the.
You
why
go,
even have it?
Yeah,
I don't even think it's necessarily a split rail fence. They just say in the code a fence.
Right.
And I mean, I've been tempted to put up a chain link fence with vinyl slats in it just to comply, but they just say a fence. And they don't say how long it needs to be, or that's why we put a little hint of a fence in at the corners of the property and stuff.
It actually says decorative fencing, I think now.
Okay, decorate, well,
So I think the intent is to have a non-vegetated
Feature.
decorative
Barrier.
feature, right?
Yes.
So instead of a fence, maybe you could just say,
rock.
yeah, like a boulder cluster. I mean, you can do something where it's non-vegetated, but it's not necessarily a fence.
So, because right now it says thou shalt have fence. And some of these fences are so badly maintained, I think they're hideous.
Right.
The prime example is, go ahead.
what is the purpose of a fence anyway? I mean, you're using landscaping to designate the separation between the street and the parking lot, you're using screening, landscaping, you're using all sorts of other methods. What's the purpose of the fence to start with?
So there's dual purposes, and first I'm going to disclaim, this has been in the code since 2006 when they adopted the first one, so I have no idea why they put it in there. And when we went through the rewrite in 17, nobody really talked about the fence. Fence wasn't on the table. It kind of got skimmed over. It just stayed in the way it is. So there was no conversation. I can't even share that with you. But where I think they were trying to go and didn't develop the code is there are some areas to where if you put like the city's lot, if you put that decorative wrought iron fencing, you should be able to have less landscaping standards because the fence is a component of the landscaping to enhance that barrier and that buffer maybe. I think, because I've seen it in other communities and I've seen it in other places, or a combination of wall with some plantings, a low level wall. I think they were going from that standpoint and they just didn't ever vet it out, or it got edited out during the changes that happened on the wall
Because
because it lost its way.
I think as it's written now, it either needs to be fleshed out, or cut out,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
doesn't really, when I go and look at some of these,
Mhm.
doesn't do anything positive. A lot of times it's just a detractor.
Mhm.
One of the ones I hate the most are the metal fencing in front of
Valley Village.
thank you, that one. They're all rusted to bejesus because the plows have gotten them and rusted the sand and the salt and the weathering.
This is a harsh environment.
It's terrible.
Feature.
But I like my big boulders.
Right, and boulders are great because they don't rust, if
The longer they're there, the better they look.
They
Right.
don't fall down.
they don't fall down. The snowplow hits it. Like
You win.
plow.
Yep. If the kid on the snow machine with the four-wheeler hits it, I win. We put them in there to protect our trees. And they're great. Had one kid on a snow machine go up a tree that we put in one year. This was 10 years ago, or longer, actually. Like 12. And so then we put a big rock on the other side of it. Never had a problem. Tree damage ever again.
I mean, and if somebody likes the look of fence, they can still put it in,
Exactly.
but it's
It's like
not
perennials.
required.
It-
Mhm. Right.
The aesthetic,
We write it as far as like, yeah, non-vegetative,
Well,
tree, whatever.
but
Boulders are already required.
are they?
They're not required, they're.
No, they are
They are
required.
required.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I thought
So-
in the perimeter.
they-
Right,
okay.
so if you've already, and even my work in Nevada, I use lots of boulders in my parking meters because it protects the plants during winter and if people try to cut the corners, but
Mhm.
it's a fairly inexpensive way to kind of protect things. And they look nice instantly and always.
Yep,
They provide
forever.
nice winter interest, and I agree, I don't think the fences really do anything. So I think, like I said, if you like the look, you can always put it in, but I think we should just take it out to make it simpler.
It's a spice you can add or you don't. But to
Well,
require.
I have one other question regarding fences, and when we're putting in a buffer between incompatible uses, is a fence, a solid fence, considered enough of a buffer to work towards that goal?
Lord, I hope so, because I got a 12-foot block wall.
Yeah,
But you have a block wall and you have elevation,
Yeah.
but some people don't have that.
I understand. I'm just saying, okay,
Yeah.
qualifies, that's what I've got.
You didn't need a, yeah, you meant.
and I'm mainly talking about buffering between, not necessarily buffering along a street, but buffering between two pieces of property and one's a different use than the other, where we're required to use some kind of buffering.
Well, what do we think?
Well, I can share comments from property owners
Okay.
because you were involved with Kendall Ford, so they cleared without approval, unfortunately, yeah. And they had a nice vegetative buffer that screened them from the homes on Whispering Woods.
Oh, behind.
Yes, behind our Quiet Circle, Whispering Woods, I think
Sure.
it is. So between the utility easement being cleaned and now the swath cleaned, they had it wide open. Now, I think you worked on that one, right, Marie? So to be honest, I don't think the landscaping is enough to actually screen it, but they went with the 95,
It's like a 97%.
7%,
It's
the
like,
slat.
it's the highest you can get in
Yeah.
the special order.
Yeah.
Oh,
So to get the opacity, so I think there may be some, like if you did a block wall, then yeah, no landscaping should be required. If you want to do a wooden privacy fence and there's gaps, then you got to deal with that light and noise that that goes through that. And the same with, that's what we allowed Kendall to do. They initially started with the regular slats, but you can see right through those. You can hear right through those. They really don't do much in the way
Oh,
of
they
visual
make
buffering
noise in
or
there. Yeah.
right. So that wasn't, I mean, the property owner has said it's fine. He's not complaining about that.
Okay.
So I think as long as you get enough of a solid opacity, the problem is, then you have, not the problem, you just have to make options. If it's this kind, then you gotta do some additional plantings. If it's not that kind, then you don't.
Okay, fences, this much. No fence.
It would be nice to add an opacity level to that
Mhm.
requirement,
Let's do that.
because we went back and forth trying to figure out what opacity was gonna be acceptable,
Mhm. Yeah, because the code didn't say.
because the code didn't say. So if it said, a chain link slatted fence with 95%. Great, or something like that, then that's something to think, look, this is what we're looking for. And then the fencing companies will get used to having this material, and it'll be a special order that takes 6 months to order. So
is there a rating on fencing you can say with the
Yeah.
capacity level?
You can.
So this is good. I like this. So I guess how do you build that combo of what, how do you communicate that easily and clearly?
there's text in here, I can't remember where it's at exactly, but if you just,
5 minutes.
in the fencing, you just say, chain link fence with slats at 95% capacity or something like that, or, and it would be nice, because we've had some people who like the chain link fence because they're better in the wind.
Yep.
And we have some people who like the wood fence.
Cedar ones, yeah.
Right, because they are more conducive to their
Pretty,
aesthetics
yeah.
and maybe they don't get that much wind because of the trees or something like
Sure.
that. So, so I know that Tina and I have gone back and forth on different wood fencing types. there's either the good neighbor fence where it's kind of offset.
Yep.
The shadow box or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
So you have a slat on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think we've gone through several different designs of those kinds of fences. One was solid on one side, solid on the other one was different. Yeah, it's kind of an offset panel rail or.
Probably. I don't recall it right
Yeah,
now, but I'm not.
we've gone through
I'm not
several
arguing.
different designs, so it would be nice to have those kinds of specifications laid out. Whether, and even if it's a graphic that shows the pattern for wood fence.
And we have, yeah, we don't have graphics for that. So it's in your package on 33 through like 39 is where it starts talking about the screening and buffering and it. There's some other example or extenuating circumstance that require it. And I think, I don't know, just to be honest, I don't know what your thoughts are, Marie, but I don't know what the purpose is of the shrubs. It has deciduous trees and evergreen trees. I think the evergreen trees do a better job of providing that screening and buffering than any kind of little deciduous shrub would ever do.
Yeah.
Because, and it doesn't say which side
It
to
just
put it
depends on
on.
where it's at. So if it's up against parking lot, then you have vehicles that could potentially be parking into those evergreen trees. So it's nice to be able to have an option of deciduous trees where you have more of a canopy.
Yeah, but you have a width that you have to maintain.
True.
I
But you get some of these, especially these lots where you're trying to work around existing conditions. So it's nice to not give the perfect, as a professional, when I hear buffering, I understand what that means. And because professionals are preparing these plans, that's basic information. So we should be able to understand, okay, this is what we're trying to buffer. This is an effective way of doing it because this is standard practice in the field. So for instance, when I do parking lot buffers from the road, typically you do that to keep headlights from approaching into the roadways. So typically you want at least a 3-foot high at maturity shrub to kind of buffer that lighting. And I know that because that's what I do. So you have professionals, it's in the code, that are supposed to be writing these plans, so they should know what that means. So if the issue with the buffering with fencing is the light pollution, then that's a little bit different than just dealing with noise too.
But it's both. See, because you're talking about buffering along the roadway
Right.
for safety and that kind of, but then now we're talking land use compatibility. And we're not talking the one where somebody put residential and commercial zoning. We're talking about it's a legitimate residential zoning. Right now, commercial's coming in next door to them. So how do you adequately screen and buffer them
So
from the
you've
impact?
got two different options. Either you do, if you're worried about light pollution through the fence, the evergreen trees do a fairly decent job because they're solid at the bottom, but then they come to a point.
Mhm.
So then anything that's going over that fence, it's.
Till they get taller.
Right, but still, I mean, a lot of times they're not that wide. Right?
Evergreen.
So you've got a couple different options and maybe what it is it's just describing what the ultimate goal is. Because you can do deciduous trees, which kind of help with the noise and stuff that's coming over the fence, even in the winter, because you've still got the branches and stuff. And if you put shrubs along the bottom, you've got something that's taking care of that light pollution. You do an evergreen feature, whether it's trees or shrubs or something, you can block the headlights going through the fence. And so maybe it's a combination. So maybe you say, a combination of evergreen and deciduous plantings that provide a certain amount of buffering or something like that. And you describe what you want to do. And then you give the professionals the option of saying, okay, so this evergreen tree does not fit in this spot for whatever reason. We cannot use it. But I can put a deciduous tree with a shrub underneath it.
So I think it was in you guys' original package and I can send it out again. So Sarasota County does an opacity rating that you're talking about. between these type of uses, you must have a screening and buffering with landscaping or fence with an opacity of X.
Mhm.
And they describe how you do that, but a lot of it puts, again, the professional knows how to do that. They knows what plants are gonna accomplish that opacity rating.
Mhm.
And it was reviewed by a landscape architect in-house. But how do we translate that to the layman who's doing a smaller project that's not triggering the requirement for the landscape
Graphic.
architect? That's what I'm saying. So we would have to do it kind of two ways, a visual graphic and a whatever. And I'm open for any kind of suggestion on how to do it, because I've looked at so many codes and they all
Right.
choose different ways of screening and buffering, but
Well, and this option also allows you to preserve existing trees, because a lot of our trees are deciduous trees. So if you've got an evergreen requirement for your buffer, and you've got existing deciduous trees, now what are you supposed to
well,
do?
you can give them credit. But what I'm finding is most people have clear cut it either legally or illegally. Either they want to clear cut it because they need to grade the site, or they've done it
Well, and
contrary
that's
to the
that's an
approval.
education thing. So I know with our projects that we've had that issue with, we have really emphasized, this is the extent of the clearing area.
No, I'm
and we-
saying the
and we-
development wants to clear it because
Right.
they need to.
Right, but that's kind of one thing that we've actually really emphasized, and I think it's been a lot more successful than in the past, because a lot of times they just go through and they just do what they've always
Yeah,
done,
just-
and they don't realize why it's important that you not just clear the whole site. And so when we've gone through and we've really educated the contractor and said, no, if you clear this, we're in big trouble, and we have to spend lots of money to fix it. So, and it's actually, I think it's actually worked fairly well.
But see, what I don't want to do, again, so it's kind of contrary. I mean, the city's pro-development and planning department is pro-development too, but it needs to be smart development. And smart has all kinds of meanings to what smart is and what's good for the future growth. But Kendall Ford, what they did was not a problem in and of itself. We want that land to be maximized out for their usage, because as they can utilize it more, they can generate more sales tax, they create more jobs. There's a lot of positives. We don't want them to have to preserve large stands of natural trees. So what is that right kind of buffer that you can go in artificially after the fact? So
My
that
question is this. I got a raw, native lot. So behind Home Depot, all that area up there, that's just really not been touched on. If I want to develop it, and let's say I'm butting up against some residential, which, somewhere, there's some back there. How much do I have to leave currently to be legal? How many feet?
So it depends on your use, whether you're industrial or commercial next to
Say commercial.
residential. So then it's a tight deed buffer.
It's also gonna depend on the density of the existing plants.
Okay, but is there,
Are you talking
are
about
counting plants?
room do you wanna leave, or how many existing trees, that much existing stuff?
What is the definition now?
So page 38 tells you, I don't know what it says off the top of my head, so I'm reading it but I'm gonna point you to it. It's page 38, just under that chart. It's letter, Roman numeral, little 2 I's, plants. And that's where it starts talking about existing or new.
Because some of them are undergrowth here, if you just let it alone. Crap gets thick,
Mhm.
especially if you clear up to it. As soon as the sun hits it, it just goes right.
Mhm.
On the corner of Cruzy and Bogard, between the intersection and the Matthew Health Foundation. That chunk down there, when you leave it alone, it turns into green mat because it's exposed to so much sun. Now, some of these other ones, when I clear up to them, they've had such a canopy, kind of loose underneath, so you get some sunshine on them. They green right up. So the question is, you leave it native,
So
how much is good enough?
it kind of brings up the side point about public health, safety and welfare.
Yeah.
I know with Collier office, they have a real problem with people squatting back there.
and they have had drug needles and things like that.
There's something right behind them.
Yeah, and it's just some place where they've always congregated. And so now they've got a commercial building where they have people coming in and out late at night. And they've got this security issue because they have to maintain a certain amount of buffering or whatever. And not necessarily, they don't necessarily have to have a dense buffer for that side, because.
Yeah, they don't have
commercial.
shelter.
But when you've got these situations where you've got residential, but you've got the same vegetation type situation, now you have security issues. So, I mean.
But you're only talking a 16-foot wide
Right, but,
buffer. It's not
Is
that,
what's required?
yeah,
Okay.
between the commercial and the residential.
but what I'm saying is the code really should protect public health, safety, welfare. It's kind of the point of it. So now keeping a dense understory planting area is actually causing a public health, safety and welfare issue.
Now you're collecting things you don't want.
Right, so there's options, because it's not like that everywhere.
No,
So,
it can be some places.
right, it can be. So the fencing might be the option. Then you could hide behind it, but that would be issue.
Well, and if you are in residential but up against commercial, how much? Is there any onus on the residential side to have buffering to the commercial?
No, because see, so you say public safety, health and welfare, but the welfare is not of the business owner, the welfare is of the city residents.
Right.
And I have the expectation, if I buy a lot in a subdivision, that there's gonna be some mitigation to prevent excessive noise and stuff that impacts my quality of life and my property value. That's the point of this landscaping, buffering and screening. So yes, you absolutely don't want to create unintended consequences of creating congregation places for, you know, homeless people or that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's a newer piece. Certainly that should be taken into, but again, it's how do you, and it's reasonable. It's not 100%, you know, it's minimized. It's not negate because you can't remove everything. But, and I think it depends on what your use is and how big it is and how it, you know, it interacts. I mean, if you have a Walmart behind you or a Fred Meyer's or a grocery store with the trucks running 24/7 and they leave those refrigerator trucks running with their generators, I think you're going to want a really big buffer between you and them if you're residential. If it's Raising Cane's that closes at midnight, you know, with a drive-through, you probably a fence is good enough to keep the lights from shining into your house as you go around the drive-through or something like that, maybe. So I think it depends on what it is.
But you still, even in all those situations, you still want to keep everybody safe.
So.
So it's just something, because maybe just providing a little bit of flexibility in how we as professionals are capable of dealing with these situations that come up that are serious and we need to deal with them. Because I don't want to intentionally design something that I know is gonna
Be harmful.
potentially somebody would get hurt from that design. That's totally against what I am.
So we have. I guess there's a couple scenarios. You also have sometimes elevation works for you if you burn.
Mhm.
Sometimes those are great. And sometimes dirt's cheap. They're looking for somewhere to get rid of dirt when they dig a hole.
But they do create drainage issues.
Correct. But sometimes they're useful.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, if there's some flexibility in the code where we can go, okay, this situation does not work here because of this, but we could do this or this. And not necessarily a combination that you have to have everything,
Mhm.
or you have to have this, or you have to have this.
Find a way to
Some
buffer.
options.
Yeah, you need options and then you go to the planning commission if you have an unusual creative way that's unique to your site. Yeah.
I've been doing this for 18 years and I have yet to have a standard price.
But I mean, a lot of them, if you gave them 3 options, A, B, or C, one of them's gonna work for the majority of them.
Right, exactly.
Well,
But,
it-
and then the
that's what-
odd ducks are gonna have to come to the planning commission because they're,
Put
that's not
emphasis on the results. Necessarily how to get there.
right.
Because if the harder the structure between the two, the narrower you can make it.
Mhm. Right,
Block wall, you can make it 12 inches thicker, you know,
right.
maybe that thick, but you know what I'm saying? And then you buffered all the all the sound you need to, and certainly all the light. But, you know, you want to put a berm and some shrubs on top of it, you're gonna need more feet.
Yeah, what's that equate up to?
Oh,
It's
a
like,
material.
does that have to be a 2-to-1 slope, 3-to-1 slope? What is it?
Yeah, if you,
For safety?
Already packet.
oh, 2-to-1s, like, well, you. Depends on the material, really.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can get, and what you're trying to do to finish it.
So how steep can you do it, and make it stay in place?
It also depends on the height, because like 1-to-1, you probably get a 1-to-1, which would be 1 foot up or 1 foot vertical, right, horizontal. You probably get that to stand up to a certain height. But you get to a certain point, it's gonna start being pretty unstable, and it's gonna slough off on you. Typically, you want your, like, 1.5 to 1. So for every foot you're going up, you're going out 3 feet.
Oh, wow, so you need 12 feet
Both
for a
sides.
4-foot berm. Which still fits within the 16. I mean, you could go taller, so you could theoretically get a 6-foot berm in there. In the 16-foot bed and not have any plantings.
That'd be
18.
5 feet. you get by.
5's pretty tall, especially if you just add, you know.
But if you got a,
But you're not doing anything.
If you got a 2-foot-
Right.
you got a 2-foot berm, and you throw up some shrubs on top of it,
Now you got 5 foot high.
you got something. And then if you're sticking a couple trees in it, now it's, you shouldn't even know you're there too much.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, like, if you have some options and say, you can have this, this, or a combination of, then that gives the designers the ability to design what's appropriate for the site. And still,
Yeah.
you know, you can approve it.
So I'm okay with that. So where do we get those options?
So the
Well,
question
I
is,
second that.
do we sit here and write it, or can you bring us examples? I mean, do you
Well,
want to?
there's lots of, I mean, I think it's just the way that it's written. Because I mean, there's lots of different options. So I know, like what we did for the police station, we did these huge berms and then we did this huge planting on top. And so I think it's here, because that's what was written in code. So I think it's here. I think it's just,
The police station was administrative interpretation. So don't rely on that. Everything we've dealt with has been me having to interpret the code and make a call. The code doesn't,
We want
it
it
has some
clear
gray
and
areas that I can
professional.
interpret in. But if we want it to be clear to a developer to know what their options are, we need to just
Make it
focus on,
code.
yeah, put it in the code.
I'm trying to pass the buck, but it sounds to me like you have an idea. Lots of things.
because it, like I said, it's here. I think it just needs to be,
Do you mind, do you take it back? Even,
it starts on,
I mean,
I think it starts on 33
Because-
and goes through
Yeah,
39.
Sorry, I have a question for you. You know the permit law that you put on? Can I give that to the council members? Okay, I just want to make sure it's right there. Thanks.
The other thing is there an option that would get rid of the landscaping component, like they want to do a brick wall, you know, decorative brick wall that
Yeah,
8 feet, 10 feet tall or something like that,
Right.
or 6
6
feet,
feet
whatever,
tall.
however you
Yeah.
want, you
well,
know.
and that's where the and or
Yeah.
options come in.
yeah, here's a menu, pick something.
Right.
You're like, man, I need every inch I can get. What can I do?
Right.
Well, build a
But
fence,
on
build a wall.
street side, we wouldn't want them to have a brick wall, right?
no, this is between
No.
land use. So
Okay.
the
Well,
street
if-
serves as a buffer. You don't have to buffer if the house is across the street from you.
Right.
There's no buffer required.
If you look at Lakeview Estates, that condo complex by the lake, they got a brick wall holding the lake against the highway. You don't notice it
Oh,
anymore.
no,
See,
it's all grown over.
yeah, it's all grown over. Me back then, you could notice it. It wasn't unsightly.
But I mean, you could have the brick wall up against, but selectively for visual, you know, so you don't block drivers.
Yes.
So in Nevada, subdivisions are required to have a perimeter brick wall, 6 foot tall, and it's like you're in a prison.
Yeah.
Right.
You really are. I mean, it's
Right.
dark and especially with this tightness.
Because you don't have any green vegetation.
Well,
In
and-
Florida, it's
and they don't-
amazing.
And they don't like it. Those people, they want the biggest house they can put because they don't spend any time outside. So they put these huge lights, but it's literally like a prison, and so they're starting to get,
Even on street side, they have brick or?
yeah,
All around.
all the way around.
Oh,
And there's lots of those.
Environmental, yeah.
No, I mean, like, is it each individual lot inside that subdivision or is it just?
No, so it's just a perimeter
Yeah,
and
Around the
then
whole
there's
subdivision.
individual
Yeah, that's what I-
fences.
Gotcha, you
whatever,
have seen that
whatever.
in yours.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Gotcha.
But it's incredibly expensive.
Oh, yeah.
It's like $200 a lineal foot down there. Over here, you've got massive freeze thaw cycles and it would just be a nightmare.
It is.
And then the question is, I mean, that's really a structure and you really want that stuff in your setback,
Right.
you know?
In our
Well, it
case, we
depends,
did.
because some of them do want them in it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of communities that
We
do.
put them up.
But I think they're starting to, like, communities are starting to move away from those brick walls just because they just feel like such a prison.
Depends on what the road is next to you. So a lot of the ones in Florida are up against a 4-lane or a 6-lane highway. And they don't want to hear that road noise
And that's the thing about
and see
putting
it.
it on menu.
Yeah, it's an option.
Behind my office, they came in there and they dug 6-foot holes to put into footings for the columns. And then put in a footer for the whole length of it, and we've dealt with the frost fairly well.
Where was the one you were talking about? Sorry.
Lakeview Estate's next to the lake. It's on the south side of the lake.
Oh, I think I know where you're talking about.
The condos that
Yep.
overlook the park.
Yep. You're getting there. There you go. Right there, down. Nope.
Oh, wait, which side?
South, keep going.
Oh, on the railroad
Keep
track
going,
side?
yep.
Oh, these.
Yep. That's a block wall full length right there.
I gotta go out here.
Or no, so it's block wall.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't see it from the trees.
Can't see it anymore, but used to.
Oh, okay.
But really, I mean, what is it doing? It's not really doing anything.
No, but their
It blocks a little
elevation.
sound. For
For the
them,
ground level, it helps the ground level. It doesn't help the second story.
yeah, and it's really not for this side.
No, it's for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not a requirement in the code to put any kind of
Yeah.
Maybe it
perimeter
was
for
there
but what's
just for,
funny is
keep the
when I
dirt.
moved in there,
supposed to
there's
be.
no
It's
city
even out of the
that.
railroad right away.
So,
Make
They
me
used to
wonder
do
that
that one
too.
right there.
Yeah.
That's probably.
so did it at all help?
I don't know.
Because there's been lots of studies about whether the walls actually help, especially even with the
Sound
big,
good.
At ground level, I think it does.
because you get the echo.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
still get it.
Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
see, there you go.
There it
Look at
is.
it now.
It's more of
Was that a
it
different
seems
time
like
of
it's more
year?
of
that
a.
Yeah,
was-
you know, that's
buffer
2009.
than
Oh,
anything
okay.
else.
So
Because I
it used to
guarantee
be
you they-
less grown
the
up.
train, and it goes through there, the residents can still
Oh, I'm
What?
well aware.
We can hear it across the lake.
I can hear it at my house.
I
I
like
live
that.
on Conwood Lake.
The train engine itself's not so bad. It's when the engineers decide to play with the train whistles they go by, which is a violation of federal code.
So I thought they had to use it to go through any intersection.
Yes,
I
they
do
do.
too.
But as they go by and go, they get a phone call.
Oh. I see.
They get a phone call. And I finally found the numbers to some of the higher ups of Alaska Railroad.
Do you still live there?
I used to. Oh, miss it. It was nice stuff for us when we needed it. But yeah, I found some cell phone numbers and some things and said, okay, are you gonna handle it or am I gonna call the feds? You decide. One of my neighbors, who's a retired Marine, got in his truck, followed the train in Anchorage into the yard, had a face-to-face with the engineer. Yeah. And he's, he's just retired, he's in his 60s, he's not happy.
Especially driving all the way to Anchorage, you just get madder. as you
Oh,
go.
man.
So Andy, can you see the picture that they were talking about? Sorry, I forgot to share.
So I think he's on mute and doesn't know.
Can you go over a little bit just for fun
Yeah,
and
which
so
way?
we can, to the right, or
This
I
way?
guess, yeah, I was just curious to see that wall that's there.
Oh, the graffiti wall?
Yeah, I
Oh,
think that just looks so atrocious and it's nothing to do with our committee, it's just sad,
That
I
one
guess,
right there?
that the train
Well,
gets to see
yeah.
that every time.
And as you see this stand of trees over here,
Uh-huh.
this bank over here, in 10 more years, it's gonna look like that. Let's see
Right,
how far it's
Oh,
come
it's
in 10
gonna
years.
go all the way down. That will actually probably do more than that wall will.
Oh, yeah, by far.
Mhm.
But there's the building there now. There's
Yeah,
a building
that's,
right on
that's
the other
clear.
side. Yeah, that's the Collier one you're
Mhm.
speaking of. Okay. Gotcha.
That's shortly after that lot was cleared the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was ground.
It's amazing how quickly vegetation recovers here.
Oh,
Oh, boy.
with our growing season, yeah, if it's the right stuff, it just.
Oh, man.
All right, so I guess the real question is how to define buffering versus the fencing to build a menu so somebody can understand. If I leave it alone, it's this. If I want to push up and build, then it's this, or if I want to go all the way flat to a fence. It's this.
Like I said, I think it's here. I think it just needs to be simple.
Do you want to put that in your queue and take a look? Okay, so move on to the next thing. What is the next thing? Who else talked about what's next?
Actually, if you wanted to backtrack to your beginning of 50, you guys kind of jumped. You went to 60.
You know what?
You can
If
finish
if
60.
it matters, I mean, if it's low hanging fruit, pick it quick.
I think it was just a one that came up. Yeah, I don't know if you have any low hanging left, but
Maybe section by section.
Because we narrowed it down to,
17 is the beginning of 0.050.
which was one of the big ones we were working on.
Yeah, so you have 050 and 060 as your two big chunks. Mainly 050, but 060, well, I'll say that maybe the other way around. No, I think it's mainly 060. But because you've already hit a lot of 050, you see the stripe through an underline.
So did you completely get rid of the 15%?
No, we should talk about that.
I don't recall that being on the table, but
Where's,
Okay, it's that first paragraph
of which,
on 17.
no, I moved it. I just moved it.
Oh, okay.
It's under C now.
So that's part of that, if you follow the proposed outline. So when I move it, it shows as stricken, but it doesn't show that it was moved. You just have to find it. So like I tried to go into that more logical mindset of, okay, I want to know what my clearing restrictions are, then what do I preserve and what do I get for doing that? And then past that, what
I
else?
think before we're done, we're probably gonna have to wind up with the whole renumber,
Oh, yeah, it's fine.
you know, instead of 33, I don't know if we could call it 30, is 34 exist?
We just repealed and replaced last time and
Right,
kept the same 1633.
well, there you go.
So
That would work.
Because people are familiar with it.
So I thought, I was thinking about earlier today, as far as clearing goes, that part of talking about the whole purpose of landscaping is to promote, part of it's promote or control, prevent pollution.
Yeah,
And-
drainage, seepage,
yeah,
diet.
and my thought was that, is it unreasonable to allow a clearing up to a certain amount? As long as there's no earth disturbance. You're just knocking down trees, you're not digging up any soil, which would then start that potential for tracking
Erosion
out,
and-
erosion, all that kind of stuff.
So thinning,
Thinning, or, yeah, I mean, should we really, or somebody wants to clear 100 square feet on the, or 1,000 square feet, whatever, on the property. The point of which it seems kind of excessive to have to chase a permit.
we actually can't get a permit right now until you're ready to develop. So
Okay.
you can't just get a clearing permit
why not?
because the decision was based on
I'm
records.
asking this side, why not?
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you meant historically.
No, I'm asking this room,
Is
why not?
if you clear and you go through a winter or something, then you get erosion. And so now you're losing dirt and you're covered in pollution.
Well,
and things like that.
That's what I'm saying, we're not,
Thinning,
well, no, I mean, there's a few different steps. I think anyway, you could clear trees without causing a whole lot of soil disturbance that would then cause erosion. I mean, yes, you could, it's just on a slope, could cause some erosion, but on a general flat, relatively flat area, you're probably not gonna have any sort of track out erosion problem of that sort.
Mind you, if you're residential, you can clear it if you want to. Well, it's just not.
Yeah, I guess
If you're in a flat land or near water. What if I want to put in grass? Who's to stop me?
Single family and duplex is exempt.
so we're good.
Right.
Okay.
So it happens. But how do we make it happen commercially so that it's not an eyesore or the other problems you're talking about?
So a lot of communities have a 10-day maximum undisturbed or disturbed surface, and it's usually part of your SWIP where if you have dirt that's open
Right.
for 10 days, it's not being worked on actively, you have to revegetate it or stabilize it somehow.
Right, but I'm going just clearing, not, I mean, like, so Anchorage, you wanna
like the
dig
rough
something,
grading.
you got land, you got the build and grade permit, you do have a clearing permit or use permit for anything that was over an acre of clearing, something like that, without land disturbance. And then, or something like that, I kind of looked into it a little bit. Now, I don't know if it's really necessary, I'm just saying, like, if somebody wanted to go out there, they want to clear, I don't know, 1,000, 5,000 square feet of property that's not messing with any of your, outside limits.
Clear it out of the middle,
Yeah,
get a sense for what's there.
is a permit really?
Where is it appropriate? Where is it okay?
What scenario would you do that for? Like what?
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
No, I mean, I was just
Yeah,
curious.
I'm trying to think.
Well, I can tell you
I mean-
that if I owned those commercial lots behind Colliers Place. And I
Like-
had those people living in
The
it,
guy,
I'd want to thin them.
like the guy that came in here and
Yep.
that was an issue with the vagrancy over here.
His problem has to be solved by. the
But his
mayor,
problem is the understory stuff, it's not necessarily.
Right.
No, his problem is he's got a bowl.
Yeah, it's kind
Oh, well, that's
He's
a
got a-
grading issue.
Yeah,
But-
exactly.
right.
Then how do you get to that? That's a whole
Right.
other
Right,
discussion.
right, that's a little bit, but if it were a
That's the
similar
grading
type,
permit.
if it were a similar type lot, it's less than, 5,000 square feet or whatever
But
of an area,
Yeah.
it's relatively
why
flat.
is 5,000 special?
I don't know.
Just
Throwing a
throwing
number
number.
out there.
Right, okay. I'm not busting your balls.
So
Just
if you
being
own a
rhetorical.
commercial lot in downtown Wasilla,
Not downtown.
okay, so in a residential area in Wasilla, you can clear.
No, if you own residential, you.
Anywhere, yeah.
You clear it, you can clear it.
There's no residential zoning downtown, so, but
Well, and the way this reads is no lot may be cleared without a permit. Actually, says native vegetation, that's another issue too, but get onto that later.
Right, but if I am going in for residential, I don't have to get a permit at all. Do I?
you do not.
Right, but commercial you do. How's that?
Well, I say if it's already developed with a home, you do not. If it's a vacant residential lot, you can't clear it either till you're ready to build a home.
But if you have a home on.
But do I need a permit to build a home?
Yes.
Do I have to have? a site
And that's where we look at what are you clearing? Is the land? Most of the time, the answer would be you could clear the whole thing, but there could be some topography issues and therefore, depending on your topography, you're gonna have to show some grading and how you're not gonna create runoff onto the street or someone else.
Let's say I'm in there in R1, the bottom edge there. I got a lot in there just rhetorically. It's just, the back end, somebody else a lot frames the street. I gotta get a permit. Right.
To build a home, yep.
I'm establishing.
And your permit will get covered landscape or
The
you don't have
clearing.
to do the landscape, but it covers the clearing.
Okay, so I go in and say, I'm gonna build this home, it's gonna stay right here. Then you say, okay, have fun. But at that point, I can clear it as the edge if I wanted to, grass it there.
That's why I said you show on the site plan where you're clearing, but yes, you could theoretically clear edge to edge.
Okay.
In residential.
You can do it in commercial too. You just have to
You gotta plan that.
put back 15%.
Oh, okay.
It used to be only single family was exempt from the 30%. And then we added duplex because that's a common type of development, a low density development. So that was given the same exemption.
So usually the purpose behind not clearing until you're ready to develop, usually the issue with erosion. So,
Aesthetics too.
Mention this.
right, yeah.
That probably. And left for decades.
How about Erlen Nelson's, the one that's
I guess it's bad.
Where's that?
next to their property?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that whole thing, yeah.
But I think you're right. It shouldn't be left up to the discretion of whoever sits in the city planner's seat to decide what thinning is. So let's say you do have an issue with safety or,
We have to
other
address it.
Yeah.
things, there should be something in the code that says you can do this, even if it requires a permit. It wouldn't be an expensive permit, it would be a $25, $50 permit, just to make sure,
That there's a plan,
yes,
and
and
the
that you,
plan gets followed.
yes.
Right.
So why can't there be a section, I'm kind of being rhetorical in it, that says a thinning, grading, nuisance, whatever. So let's say you got a lot that drains wrong, and you're flooding somebody. Let's say you got a lot that's like the nuisance one down here where it's a big bowl and you got all the people, the junkies in the middle of it camping out. If somebody comes in and says, okay, I'm gonna mow it down, I'm gonna plant here, here, and here. The idea is probably put something there eventually, and then we'll revegetate the whole thing. It'll solve this issue.
Looks like just a revegetation
Right.
or like a grading.
Yeah, it's like what they did on the Collier lot and the other ones you just talked about, except they actually put something nice back on it. Why not?
But I guess you already have, you still go through the use permit, right? Something like that, or not use permit, but land use permit.
Or I'm trying to improve my lot to
You
make
just
it
wanna-
sellable,
Sure.
because I know I can make something like it if it's basically ready to rock, it looks pretty. Versus this rolly thing that's,
But you don't know what they want to do with the lot. So the rolling thing might work for their design. Collier may or may not have wanted the daylight basement type two-tier building,
right.
but
well, then
if
still-
you'd have graded it and flattened it, then you would have taken that option away.
Right.
Yeah,
think
so
so.
that slope is so
Fine.
steep that there's no way you can done anything other than what they put.
Right.
I'm trying to find a reason
Yeah,
why you
something
want to
that was-
clear something and not do anything else with the lot, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's not an issue.
And everyone that's asked me and asked the mayor and come to the city has wanted to either mine the gravel and use it off-site on another job.
Mhm.
Okay, and we tell them you can go through a gravel extraction permit if you want to, but that's a
Do they
conditional
require
use to go to the planning commission.
revegetation?
Yeah,
Eventually.
so
Gravel pits.
they don't want to do that because that's not really what they're doing. They just want to take the topsoil off. And then and they don't want to put anything back.
Right.
So if, there's a whole argument about tree canopies and, unique canopies. The green is good for social health, so you're talking about public health. It's a proven fact that when you have green, that's good. When there's no green, it's not good. So if you have an undeveloped, well, no, once you put the building up and you have plans, you can submit it and clear the whole
Right.
thing.
Well,
It's
say-
until then, just on a speculative basis, should you be allowed to leave that scar
Well.
for the city to deal with while you're just for an investment purpose, so.
Okay, but if it's a nuisance, a drainage, whatever, find the reasons.
Right, so maybe what you need is a public health, safety and welfare section where
Yeah.
if it falls
Mhm.
underneath this area.
If it's a nuisance, if it's a problem.
Right,
In that manner, you still need to make a permit application.
Right.
Right.
Exactly, but we need a section that takes care of these, because we're not talking about now. The homeless problem not getting better, folks.
No, right.
I keep thinking about that guy with those drainage issues and he felt like he was just stuck.
Drainage?
The
But
one
yeah,
that came in here, I think.
he had the drainage issue at his office, he
Dimitri,
paved his lot. Although we don't know all the ins and outs. of
No, we
it,
don't.
But,
No,
But
so he had one lot where he
Make it
had
a process.
vacancy on, and then he had the other lot where he paved.
It was actually a sewer issue that turned out it was a
Okay.
sewer tank was put in wrong and so it created drainage and flooded him out. Had nothing to do with his lot grade,
right,
had to do with the job, but
but I
And
could
that's
see
still a
where that
nuisance
would,
issue.
right, I could see where that could happen.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, just right
But
up.
that other lot, I haven't looked, that's a nuisance.
I
The only
like,
one next door to me.
I can see where you don't want to clear it. If we're flat enough, you clear it, you take care of it, or you clear it and you just
So
have
when I look at it,
existing stuff around it.
to me, the simple thing is you take the front corner off that points into the intersection. Because it's like a bowl. And if you could clear and grade that front edge of it, just flatten it. Now you have this nice berm across the back and it's flat inside. And you just grass it or
Right. But
Flowers.
something like that, where you're actually grading, you're digging, you're exposing all this stuff. You're exposing all this stuff, you should have a permit requirement there.
sure.
Right.
But let's
Make
make
sure
it
that it all gets stabilized.
So,
Oh.
so one thing that comes to mind is my church. So I go to Sacred Heart. And they've got,
That's outside the city.
well, and they've got an issue with they're finding needles in their playgrounds and
Yes.
stuff because their site is completely surrounded by all those trees and it's pretty, if you park in there, you can't see anything. So it's a big security issue. And that's pretty common, it seems like.
Not good.
Mhm.
That's, almost a stone's throw from my office.
Right.
We found needles. I found needles right outside my gate.
Yeah.
If they
That's
got
a
a gate,
developed site, so they could go ahead and clear it all out. They just have to
Well-
have 15% at the end of the day if they were in the city.
right.
Right, but I'm saying like.
Yeah, they
this
could
is
clear
a
the whole thing,
situation that
yeah.
I know of, but I'm sure it's common elsewhere.
So can we make something so that as in the future, as nuisances are identified, that they have a way to remediate it? Because I'm gonna be here a while. I don't like that element. Setting up shop.
And if we're gonna go, I guess if you're talking about putting in a whole section. to
It doesn't
do that
get
kind of
very
stuff.
long.
No, but if you're dealing with bigger, nuisances, health and safety concerns, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
should there, maybe that should even be a, call it make it a free permit to where you're actually trying to improve everything for everybody else as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why should we use?
So there, I wonder if there's a section in Anchorage code that talks about this, because they've been doing a lot of clearing.
Well, that's what I was getting at. And that's kind of where I was like, well, why do we have to have clearing, a permit for clearing up to a certain amount? Because, it might be someone wants to just open up their yard a little bit. And all you gotta do is knock down trees and lay the
Yeah,
topsoil over or something like that.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking about Anchorage, and so I started looking at Title 21 a little bit, and I couldn't really nail down what kind of permit would require just for clearing if you didn't want to do any sort of earth service.
You're right.
But on the same side, if we had this discussion, I don't know that there's a whole lot of application for that. So I don't know that's really big.
Well,
to do.
If we have this nuisance issue, whether it's a drainage issue, we have an earthquake and it slumps, now I got a drain, I got a puddle, I got a problem.
And I don't think any of those are, I'm just saying, from what I was trying to say is there a reason that we have to have a permit just to do clearing? Issues that you guys bring up all require some sort of grading, some sort of earth service activity where you have to come back and stabilize it.
Or even if you don't have to. If you're saying all I gotta do is get these trees out of here, but by code I'm not supposed to, but here's the issue. Can I do this?
Right.
And somebody reviews it and says, that makes sense.
Well, and in order for somebody to review it, you'd have to.
Permit. But if it's a life safety nuisance, whatever whether you're gonna just thin some trees, or you're gonna knock down some dirt, whatever, I'm gonna change it from this to this, revegetate. What do you think?
So an example for you is if you drive in the daytime, which it is no longer, right next to City Hall, just on the other side of that little 2-story, there's a lot next to us with 2-story building.
Trying
And
to
a
cross the
little-
street now?
Nope, just on the same side of the street as us, if you're
Okay.
headed west, down Herning. On the
Okay.
corner of, what is that? It's not Connect, it is Willow and Herning. There's a vegetated lot there. Okay, so if you look at that one, now's probably not a good time, or it is a good time because the vegetation's dead. But the property owner went there and cleared the underbrush and left the trees. Now initially, when he came in, he wanted to cut all the trees down and just create a grassed area and leave it that way. He at least wanted to put grass instead of gravel. So with Archie, the conversation was do some selective thinning, removing of trees so that you can get equipment in there to keep it mowed down underneath. I think what he did was, I think it's up for sale, but, or it was sold, but he just went in and manually I don't know, with mowers or hand tools, went and thinned
Ground
all of
up.
that out. So that one's thinned out, but it still has the trees on it. So
Yeah.
it does the safety issue, it prevents that nuisance of homeless people because you can see through the thing, but yet still maintains that vegetation. He's the only one that's come through out of probably the half dozen that I've had that was willing to do that. Everybody else really is their goal. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider it. You should consider, it, but know what they're asking for. They don't want to thin it for homeless. A lot of the time, what they're wanting to do is prep it for sale and development.
Right.
And so you have to
So
decide,
probably you're
should that be
wanting
allowed?
But
No, I'm talking about without development plans. Okay, so Neeser Construction owns
Sure.
property back off USA Circle and it's down in a hollow. And it's fairly thinned out, and so we met with them too and said, you can go take all the underbrush out and you can strategically take out trees and stuff, but they said, no, we want to go in with equipment, just take it all down. And have it prepped and ready, and it was like,
Sure.
well, that's,
Right.
you can accomplish your goal of eliminating the public nuisance and still leave some trees, but that wasn't what they wanted, so they chose to do nothing. So that's what you have to decide is what does that end result look like if you allow that? Because the bulk of the people coming in, really their ultimate goal, and they've said it is, I want it prepped and ready for development.
Well, then that wouldn't fall under public health, safety and welfare.
No,
But they
so-
couch it in, well, I want to cut the
That's
trees
right.
down. And while I'm doing it, it doesn't make sense to leave all the stumps there. I should just go ahead and dig those up too. And then while I'm doing that, I'll take the gravel out and then I'll grade it and then get it flat. And it
Well,
just
that's
keeps-
a grading permit. though. That's different. I'm
Right.
talking public health.
Yeah.
safety.
No, I know, that's what I said.
I'm
So you have to scope it right so that
Yeah.
you're
Has to be
addressing the
defined.
issue.
Well, you have a
I think-
definition.
Can't be
Yeah,
great.
this is-
Right.
It has nothing to do with, yeah, you want to sell it or yeah, you want to prep it.
It's number one, identify the nuisance, the public safety issue, or the, shed too much water in the street, or whatever. Give us your plan, how you're gonna fix it, and then restore it to vegetated state. That's easy.
Stabilize it.
Stabilize the dirt, get stuff growing back on it, it's all good. How can you do it? And at that point, why shouldn't they? And I can think of one or two right now that people want to do it, should do it, could do it. But where are we at in 5 years as these things start to pop up and we get more issues with people that don't belong there, trespassers, call it what you want. How do we do that?
That's what I was wondering if acreage has that we could look at.
Now, acreage doesn't have a lot of stands of trees left because all their lots are already
Yeah, they're-
cleared and developed. So that's not gonna be
Well,
very
I'm
helpful,
thinking more of their parks.
Yeah,
right? Because
but Parks and Rec probably just,
I'd be interested to see
Well, they've
what
been
our
sending
area
out the
would look like
military.
denuded.
They were having the military go in and clean out the camps and cut out the vegetation. So I know like by the university, that's thick.
yeah.
You can't see 5 feet into those.
I'm trying to remember where I walked recently, and it was just about 2 years ago, just awful.
So I think those are some of the big areas where.
I mean, go see a nice park and then I'm walking past piles of needles, human feces, trash, just going.
But to be honest, you get those in Minneapolis
Yes,
or
you get
anywhere
those, yeah,
downtown.
right, you get them
So I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that there's trees is not what's drawing them.
On the same side, you
They're
take
the
away
rest
all
of
the,
humanity.
take away all the trees for them to stay in, and then they end up on the side of the road, so.
Well, and then
in
you
San
get into
Francisco,
this issue.
Yeah.
Then they have the tents are easy to put
Yeah,
out.
that's not just,
They
yeah,
just-
it's just.
they pull in an old motorhome and
Yeah.
there they are.
Yeah,
Seattle, same.
there's, you go to, LA,
It's-
there's
it's-
motorhomes all over.
It's
side of road.
the corrosion of humanity that's, you're gonna have it. It's just a maintenance thing. It's just, how do we give some people a pressure release valve that need it? And I think we could find it easily. So, probably something to come back around to.
Yeah.
What's next?
I do think that saying lot may not be clear of native vegetation, I think you should just take the native, strike the native out of there.
Yeah, just faded, it's cleared.
Or-
Just define native.
I don't like my landscape, I'm gonna chop it off.
Right, right.
Oh, there you go.
It's not native.
Yeah, I bought this place and I'm just gonna mow it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not native. Those are all transplants. Just devegetated, period. What's next? How you doing over there, Andy? Yeah, he's on mute.
I'm muted, I'm sorry. I'm still
You're
here.
fine. We don't want to hear you snore anyway. You ready to chime in on some parking lot stuff there, sir?
No,
I know
in
it's
fact,
in there.
I was hoping to, I think this time we have between now and the next meeting will give me more time to pull it together. My extracurricular activities have been pretty busy lately, so I would appreciate a little bit more time to pull that parking lot stuff together.
Not that I'm trying to be pushy, but can we count on you for that? Because I really want to hear what you have to say.
Yep, yes.
You can tell January.
That a priority. of
Christmas Day.
Yes.
So, cool. So I won't worry about that too much because I think you got it. Anything else you think needs a tackle?
No, I appreciate the effort on fencing and fences, and I don't know if we ever resolved fences along a public right of way or not, but maybe that's one of the little minor issues that we could dispense with.
The requirements for aesthetics versus requirements for buffer.
Right, but there's no fencing buffer requirement along the right of way.
Okay.
Right, but there still is a requirement for a fence, and that's why we see all these little split rail fences popping up all over the place.
Yeah, just resolving that, yes.
But I have a note that the group said you were just gonna strike that section of the
Right.
code to require that.
No sense at all. But on the other buffering areas, to be able to utilize that would be great.
Mhm.
Right, it's decided.
And that's what Marie's gonna work on.
Yeah, she's got that one.
She's so glad she's here. You can share
I'm
with
glad she's
Peter.
here.
You can share with Peter.
Absolutely, sure.
They can help.
But
Well,
Peter,
and Peter and I have gone through this code multiple times.
oh.
So I'm surprised it's not in that draft that Peter sent.
I don't know if it is or not, to be
Yeah.
honest, because
It might
we're
be
just
here.
now getting into the meat of it, so I haven't like
Okay.
taken his. We had that little table of, that had some of his comments incorporated, but we kind of set that aside and started going through the actual language, so.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, his big things were the over variety of the vegetation.
Mhm.
And the need for the perennials and the fluffy stuff that should be a matter of taste, not a matter of function. Which function? Some people look pretty.
Aesthetics is subjective.
Yes, it is. People don't like my landscaping, but.
I've told you my bell bottom leisure suit there.
No.
I told you that.
I'm ready.
So you know how you see these people and they're wearing the bell bottom leisure suit and they're rocking it. They're like strutting down the road. They think they look hot and everybody goes. But that person,
They're
that
happy.
is their thing. And they
Yes.
love it. And so that's kind of how I think of aesthetics is if you like something, you like it. And that's what you want. And something different is not something that you're willing to give up.
I've seen some people that look good in bell-bottom leisure suits and you don't want to see me in one.
Exactly. So I always think that it's hard to base a code off of aesthetics because it's.
We do need to talk about coverage.
Right. So if you can give people flexibility to rock the leisure suit,
The pants should go to the ankle
you may not like it, but that person. may
and the
like
collar
it.
shouldn't make it to here. You
Right.
know,
So you need to cover the chest hair, I mean, there needs to be some decency, but
gold chain should be at least this long, not that long.
that's aesthetics. But, I mean, you can give some parameters, but you're never gonna be able to get rid of the bell bottom leisure suit, ever. So,
Let's make sure it fits.
I
Okay.
mean, you just have to accept the fact that
Well, that's-
it is what it
It's
is.
the best way I'll do for everyone. It's like it. Okay, what else needs our attacking? Andy's got the parking lot.
You guys
I
have
think
talked about a lot of 50.
The buffering is, I think, you got some stuff for us there, working that.
Where are we right now?
We're trying to attack the rest of 05.
We just talked about clearing, so.
I mean, are we on 21?
17. Where the clearing was.
Do we want to do anything, this line protection area?
I just thought by putting it in its own section, pretty good. A lot of that is really either state or federal as well that says you have to protect the water base to a certain level, blah. I don't think there's a lot to talk about. I mean, unless you think, unless you see something I don't see. You have an opinion, put it out. Lots of time.
Don't worry, just say it.
Bring it up next
I
time.
won't hold it
I'm trying to
against you.
figure out, okay, yeah, so
I don't have.
I know what the point of this is to protect your water bodies, right?
Good, right,
Question is, I guess, what is,
doesn't do the job.
Are you wanting to toss out native again?
it's no, it's more of just, it's too restrictive for people that want to develop a nice property on a lake.
What, okay, let's scenario it for me. Like, is it just not removing it at all, or put it back judiciously?
So
What's in there?
The code doesn't let you remove it.
you can't clear cut. I mean, you can thin, but you can't clear cut within 75% or 75 feet of the high water. That's above and beyond what's required by Fish and Game.
What is required by the state?
That would be.
Depends
Yeah.
whether you have wetlands or not, what lake you're on.
It kind of depends on whether you're in wetland.
Because
Assuming you don't have a wetland.
if you're on that side of the line, it's one thing. If you're on that side of the line, it's another thing.
Right, so the
Different,
borough allows you to go all the way up to the water's edge.
Okay.
As long as you're following other regulations.
Okay.
For clearing, yeah. And that's where, so you get, somebody wants to buy a house on the lake, they want to build a lot, they want to be able to
It's about a lot.
put together, have a nice backyard that fronts the lake, opened up. On the same side, again, trying to protect the water body, so you can't, it's kind of a give or take. I just don't know if,
Those are here on the point,
I don't know how you,
they're grass and water, but they've been there forever, and I think
right,
it's actually that lot right there, to be honest. I don't know for sure, but
yeah,
based on that style, it
I
gives
don't
me a
know
feeling.
how much we really dig into it. So it doesn't apply to a whole lot, but
Oh, no, I was going,
Right there.
no.
I don't know.
No, Tim, I know what you're tiptoeing around. I don't mind the tiptoeing either, but,
Oh, no,
well,
I
I
don't
mean.
agree with what he did. I'll let you know that. right
But to be
now. But
fair, there should
There
be
would-
some prescribed,
way you
what
could-
is the minimum you can
Right.
do, or the
Exactly.
maximum you can do,
Maximum,
yes.
go next.
So it's not subjective to whoever's sitting in the seat.
Exactly,
So it
because right
doesn't
now,
feel
it's like,
that
you
way.
can't clear within 75
Mhm.
feet, but you can selectively make a pathway through here, something like that.
Because as you go around the lake, you got that's all dense,
Yeah,
that's opened up a little bit, you keep going or zoom out there, and then you got, that's
But these
gravel.
are out of compliance.
Right, that's
Yeah.
gravel pad there, that one's this, but, there's a lot of variety,
yeah.
and then.
And I'm not saying, we want grass all the way up to the
Mhm.
lake's edge. I'm just saying that, is there a way we can make it to where people can have what they want to have? Build a nice, beautiful house on a lake, which is what you want to do,
Right, well, if you're gonna spend money on lakefront property,
but then you gotta
you're not
keep,
putting up.
then you gotta keep 75 feet of existing scrubby looking.
But this isn't based on aesthetics. So this particular
Well-
section of the code is not an aesthetic code. This is dealing with the biology and the environmental aspects of keeping the natural vegetation.
And I appreciate that, but also I would kind of reference check a little bit and say, okay, so where did that come from? But then you go next door to the borough. And then what are their requirements and where those come from? And then, let's really hear what is it? How do you
Well,
get the results?
I
And
believe the initial response, the initial reason for even setting that standard in place was because of the phosphates that were being flushed into the lakes from fertilizer and things like that were causing algae and stuff to grow in the lakes that we didn't like, or it was
Right.
harmful to the lake. So it's almost like, well, here's a no fail, but everybody has to live with it. We're not going to clear within 75 feet of the lake, as opposed to what do you do to mitigate that issue? And that's where your civil engineers and your landscape designers come into play.
Right,
And maybe it's something as simple as, rather than just saying you shall not clear within 75 feet, you say we will, you know.
This is how it looks.
This
from
is how,
75
this
feet.
is how we'll allow you to do it. You put together a plan. You show us how you're not gonna be polluting the lake or something like that. You're directing stormwater away from the lake, whatever. You know, give them an avenue for a
Or don't clear us at 75 feet, your choice.
application. Yeah. Rather than just saying thou shalt not, you
Right.
at least give them an avenue to go through a permit to,
Figure out how to do that.
yeah, something, I don't know.
Yeah, the interesting thing is Wasilla Lake is an anadromous lake.
Say that
So
again.
anadromous
Which
lake
means,
means it's salmon spawning.
okay, thank you.
So Fish and Game has a dog in that hunt.
Yeah.
They don't care about Lake Lucille.
'Cause
There's no salmon spawning. It's
it has
not
a
under
little
their
tiny outlet that's
jurisdiction.
kind of gross
It's,
too.
I mean,
Okay.
I think it used to be before the dam was put in place is what I've been told, but it's no longer serves that function. So they don't
30 years. or
they don't do it.
Okay.
I don't disagree with what Tim's saying, but I think that's almost a project in and of itself
Yeah.
as to how to vet that out, because everything that I read, even the burrows, how to revegetate is all encouraging you. They're acknowledging, yeah, it's all gone, but how about you put it back? And Fish and Game is, here's these revegetation guides, and we really wish you wouldn't clear cut it. So just
How
because the
about you put it
codes let you do it, doesn't mean it's good for the environment or for the lake or for the property values, because if your lake, I mean, we mow Lake Lucille.
Yeah.
Because of the nutrients going in the lake. So I
Well,
mean, that's what happens when you don't take care of your lakes and
And it-
you,
It,
you
it
know.
has a dam as part of the problem.
well, that doesn't help either. But I mean, and do you want your bird life to be there? Do you want to have the fish, you know, so they have to have spawning areas and the overhanging brush and the trees do that. And what does that actually look like? How much do you need to maintain that?
That's why instead of saying, do it your way, I said, where did it all come from?
So, yeah, the borough has a do whatever you want. The city has a more restrictive version. In fact, most planners that I've talked to, the boroughs that I wish ours said what yours said, they don't like it. They don't think it does it. Fish and Game likes, in fact, they defer to us a lot because our code compliance is stricter than what they can do. So they typically go, oh, yeah, well, okay, we'll go with what you say. Now, I'm not saying that's the right answer. I still think you're right. You should be able to submit a proposal to show how you're not going to impact the lake. You're not going to create these hazards, but yet you're still opening it up.
Because it's 75 feet, I can still put it in.
You can.
Right, okay. But let's find the. I want to attack that. What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
You know, because if you change the grade and you trap water and you do the right things,
Because I
can
mean,
you do it in 65 feet?
I don't know that the 75 feet is the right answer. I
Right,
think
that's
it's
what I'm
more,
saying.
do you keep the shoreline for at least a few feet? Do you have that depth enough to maintain that?
Do you have the
Piece of that
spongy
urban
material that's gonna
forest,
filter
you know,
all the
type-
way down? There's
Yes, and to
limitations.
slow it down. I think there's a lot of factors. And then you got topography on the north side of Lake
Right.
Lucille. Some of them are up on a bluff and then it's a steep drop off. But the 75 feet is up on the
Ridiculous.
bluff,
Yeah,
you know,
you're so far
side,
back,
so
you
is it
don't have a
really-
lake anymore.
right?
Yeah, because
There's
it's
not really
75
much
feet is measured
developed anymore.
this way,
No.
not this way.
But we
That's
have a
all
lot of
it's-
out of compliance ones.
Sure,
you
but
know,
they got there before. some
No,
of
they're
them.
not. Most of them aren't grandfathered, but
No.
they're not.
On a side note, who
Not trying to
did we
open up
talk to about
Yeah.
people feeding the ducks down at Carter Park? And because I've
Good
called the
luck.
borough about it. And because they got it stopped at Wasilla Lake, is it Wasilla Creek that flows into down by Green
Oh, yeah.
Acres? They got
Oh.
stopped there like 10 years ago.
Well, it's a city
And-
park, so
Yeah,
I
I
would say,
called the borough and
It's
they
either
said
city or
call the
Fish and Game.
city.
no, you would call it the city,
I
yeah.
said call the city. Okay.
And then they can post whatever signs they want.
Okay, because people come down there literally like with bags of day old bread, and we have this population of ducks and we have really bad leakage, and then the whole park is covered in
Ew.
duck.
Yeah, big shit, yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
so, right,
yeah, just talk to them.
Yeah.
Talk-
just
who would I
lick-
talk to?
It's
We-
like
we
Public
did
Works
that later.
Department.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
something I was
Yeah,
thinking about.
it's worth a conversation. if you
Yeah.
go there.
who would I talk to?
I would have said Archie, but the new guy's not gonna know anything about it, but you can just start with
Well,
the,
it'd be code compliance if it's a code.
it's not a code though right now.
Well, is it a state rule? Not feeding ducks?
I talked to the borough and they said talk to the city.
Right,
Yeah, I
so
don't-
It either has to be Has to be a law or regulation somewhere, so you could enforce code. Without code.
But the code can be a sign posted in the city park because the
Right.
city owns it, so we can restrict it. So, I mean, you could send an email to Eric.
Okay.
He's the director
All right.
and let him defer it to whoever he wants to. You can start there, or you can
Okay.
start with the mayor.
Okay.
And
Sounds
let her
great.
direct
If it's-
it at her staff
If
meetings
it's
to
not a
who.
code, they can
Sounds
write
great.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, sounds great.
Put it through city council.
Sounds good.
I thought it was a state fishing game issue. I thought it was. Why I said fishing game.
yeah, but these aren't the wild ducks. These are
They're,
probably those,
they've become tame now. There's probably.
they have?
100 There's
Really?
probably like 100.
even the mallards and stuff.
They're not
that eat
everything.
The bread, wow,
It's just turned into a shit.
wow.
Yeah.
Said that online. Yeah, and
me
it's
too.
just a mess. The mess.
Okay, so.
So
I was
we'll
gonna
write a
pour
note
into
down.
that. Oh, don't be sorry, that's what we're here for.
No, I just feel like
If it matters to you, it matters to you. I mean, it makes sense to me. I just don't know enough about it to contribute.
yeah. I had a client where this came up. There's a lot of other issues, and so I'm not gonna go that far into it, but over there was a takeaway that, hey, there's gotta be a way you can build a nice house,
You
you're
make it
putting
clear.
money into it. You're putting, as long as you plan this out, you get the required permits. And you do it,
And follow them.
and you follow them, yeah. And,
That helps.
there should be a way.
We'll look at that.
And the other thing that came up just recently, was somebody was wanting to encroach. So that clearing for development is a part of that 75 feet,
Right.
what can you do within that area to construct the home if you're getting that variance? And then, so it says to clear to have access to the lake, that needs to be defined as what do you mean by access to the lake? And should you be allowed some minimal encroachment for decks? Although, ground level decks destroy the vegetation underneath, so that's impacting that. But is there a scenario where sometimes that's okay?
Deck or a dog?
A deck, an actual deck on the house has to be within, outside of the 75 feet too. So sometimes some of the lots are smaller and tighter, so there's some concern there. But then again, and how much clearing do you allow them to do to access their dock now down? What's 8 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, 60 feet? I mean, what's that reasonable?
What percentage of Shoreline or.
Right. So maybe some kind of percentage of you can clear up
300
to.
feet of shoreline.
But now it is, isn't it, if you're not putting into the lake, you can pull back from the lake? Is that
What do you
correct?
mean?
Like if you were gonna do a boat ramp? Where you could-
You can't fill into the lake, but you could
You could,
dredge out. and
pull out.
basically Excavate out.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I mean, I'm
You're
just
not-
questioning.
An Army Corps issue?
Yeah,
It
it's
would be.
not
Army
like,
Corps issue.
Then you have to go to.
if
them
it's
to take a look at
wetlands,
it, yeah.
if it's not wetlands, they don't
If
have a
it's
dog
a
in it.
navigatable waterway, it falls under Army Corps jurisdiction.
Or tied to now.
But Fish and Game requires one for Wasilla Lake too, so there's two agencies on
Right.
Wasilla Lake.
But, but Wasilla Lake is not.
But we had that with, someone on Lake Lucille and they weren't really that interested. They didn't
Well,
care.
Army Corps.
Was it the clear cut one
Mhm.
this summer? Holy
That's
moly.
surprising because.
No, I'm saying they were like, yeah, it's fine, we'll issue you a permit, we'll give you an after the fact permit, so they really didn't care. Because it's that type of lake and it's not wetlands.
It's basically a.
They had one little pocket of wetlands in the corner of that right of way and a little bit onto their lot, and other than that, the rest of it was not wetlands, so they didn't care. Anyhow,
So if you want to put some effort into it,
See what I can do.
bring it to us, man. It
Throwing
really,
it up.
really comes down to, if the whole goal is to avoid pollution on the lake, what's magic about 75 feet? Find what the magic is.
Yeah.
If I was a street, nobody wants a rotten, stinky lake. I would like to see it's bad enough. But I don't need to. Or don't kill the fish we got either. That's Cottonwood Creek all the way down and,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not how they get there though.
Creek?
They're
Same.
planted for Lake Lucille.
Oh, no, I'm talking,
Oh, yeah.
I moved on
Whistle
Whistle
Lake.
Lake.
Oh,
sorry.
okay, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha,
I shifted gears on you.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I think the salmon come up Cottonwood Creek,
It's-
they can't come across the weir and the
What's that
dam.
called? It's fertilizer, whatever, it's stocked. Like Wasilla stocked.
Oh, the lake, but the creek still, the dam overflows into the creek
The
system.
dam
it's a
goes out, but it
different-
comes up through the water. There's no flowing water that
Oh,
comes in.
really?
It's like a, I don't know what you'd call,
Like
but
a spring or something?
yeah, like a
Oh,
spring.
okay.
It's a pond.
Stop calling it a pond, Larson.
Come on, man,
It's a
you've been in
nice
there.
pond.
Yeah.
How many times have you swam in that?
100,000.
Yeah, yeah, you don't touch the bottom either.
I'll try to look at that before we meet.
Oh,
If the ducks are finally being.
the ducks were actually migratory, so that.
You need access to these documents, I can send you the links to like
Because
the vegetation and stuff,
fast.
so you don't have to totally reinvent the wheel.
No, I do have the, like the
Shoreline.
shoreline,
guide.
yeah, we do.
Oh, okay.
I just,
Be a worthwhile place to do it if you want to take time to do it. Okay, next issue, are we getting there?
I don't know what time it is, but.
45.
So your next one, following the agenda on 16 is the minimum area to be landscaped that got moved from A to C that Marie brought up.
So is there magic about 15%?
So 15% is common.
Right.
So I think that whole section can be simplified.
And what feet is that on,
So,
LP, please?
21.
Thank you.
So minimum of 15% total lot area must be impervious surface. Pervious surface, excuse me, or, and I know I brought this up a while ago, but dedicated pedestrian space. So that's something that I
Where are you
personally
at?
wish there was more of.
Okay.
Is, and that would give people the option of having seating areas and things like that. And that typically goes along with landscape areas. So that was something, and I think really, if you say pervious surface, that,
Perkable.
Like
that
water goes
includes
through.
landscaping and things like that, simplifies it, other than covered with landscaping.
The landscaping's defined, whereas pervious surface, you'd have to define that.
What-
Perkable, meaning you can.
And
have
maybe
gravel
it should be
paths.
defined. I mean, that's
Is it grass
that's-
only or is it gravel? Because gravel's pervious.
Well, so maybe that needs to be defined, but that's typical when I read code, it's typically referred to as pervious surface. And the idea is to accept drainage, things like. Or dedicated pedestrian space. It's kind of unfortunate that we don't have a lot of places where we can eat outside. I have a dog.
Right.
And we will specifically go to places that has outdoor seating so that
Can take it off.
our dog can go outside. And it's nice.
So you're saying we should give credit for that?
I mean, it's an expensive improvement, but some people would find it a benefit.
So there's a difference though. There's pedestrian space that's open to the general public. Okay, so downtown gives you credit for that. If it's available to the public to utilize, then that counts. You get credit. But if it's private, restricted, I have to go in, I have to buy a meal from you, that's not credited to you.
Why not?
Because it's for your personal benefit as a business, you're generating income from it versus. So there's no public benefit to it. It's a benefit only to the
Well,
business owner
Okay, but
for the most
so
part.
if I was just walking around the street and I decided I wanted to sit on your lawn in front of your building. And I wasn't visiting your shop, I mean, it's kind of.
Gonna call the cops on you.
Right, exactly.
Trespass.
It's the same thing, so whether it's grass or it's hardscape, it's the same thing.
Unless he's got it set aside for you to just hang out on.
Right, but that's what I'm saying,
But I
like,
have
like
right on the
whether-
walkway.
whether it's grass or it's a table in front of your business, it's still gonna be used for the same purpose. You're not gonna want a bunch of people just coming in and sitting there. And we're not talking about public spaces, we're talking about businesses.
Sometimes these outdoor seating things are a buffer on their own.
Yeah, and they're nice people.
And see, one of the things I was thinking, if we're gonna get very far into this. There's a pushback on getting around this foot rail fence. I think a bench. is far more aesthetic and far more useful than a split rail fence.
Mhm.
And if that was the case, I was gonna put a bench instead of a rock out front along that path. Because lots of people walk through there
Mhm.
and, I'd much rather spend money on a bench than a fence.
Yeah, and I
If you're gonna
think
buy it,
it's,
put a concrete
it's
bench
more
on it.
likely to get used.
Oh, by far.
So,
Well, the fence get used, the kids will kick it.
no, plows will hit it.
Yeah, well, fortunately, where I would put them is far enough away that that wouldn't affect it. Lord help me.
But whether it's landscaped area or whether it's a pedestrian space of some sort, it's still gonna be used for the same purpose. It's gonna be used for the people who are using that building
You wanna know what I'm gonna say? Can you find us examples?
of,
Code that reads like that? Can you think of any?
this, most code that I read is very, very simple. It's much simpler than this, like it literally 3 or 4 pages. And I'm talking city of Reno, like, well, Tahoe's different, but
Oh,
big cities, they have very, very simple codes. And it's very broad and general. It's not very specific. So, and I think what that does is it allows people to have some creativity and to adapt their site for their use, but it still makes a nice area.
from the code nerd. Cause yeah, I read stuff like this, especially in healthcare, but it doesn't always apply to landscaping. If you have examples, will you email them to us?
Yeah, so I guess City of Reno does have some. I really like it. I just see some of the problems with it, but I think, like I said, I think if it's just a dedicated pedestrian space. So somebody can't, park
Well, I walked through Reno not that long ago. And they have a lot so up against, and this was downtown, so I don't know what the rest of it looks like. I remember walking by some of these restaurants where instead of just landscaping in this area, they had landscaping, but then they had all their tables and stuff tucked in, and it was for their use, but it also had the beauty and the buffering.
Mhm, yeah, and they
So I see what you're saying.
they're great spaces.
And people attract people when they see other people sitting outside, they wander through and so I can see that.
That's one thing that you see, especially along like river corridors and stuff, is people are outside and there's places for them to use. People don't use landscape beds. They use benches and they use. So if you want to encourage people to actively be in your space, you need to create spaces for them to be active. And it's an option. They can either do the traditional landscaping or they
I
can
like
do.
the conversation.
I really like that. I think that would be a really
Mhm.
interesting.
Because there's some
option.
spots on mine, doesn't change my landscape ratio at all.
The intent isn't that you're creating like a 2,000 square foot patio and calling that landscape.
Right, that's, yeah, and
It's just like a table, bench, whatever. here and
right,
there,
it's an
not
outdoor
huge.
space for people to be
You
in.
just have to define the maximums,
Right.
because I'm telling you, every day.
It'll
of the
be
week,
fresh.
Someone's gonna come in and they want to pose
Right.
15% of their lot in an asphalt, and they're gonna call this a public place, they're gonna put one bench out there and a
Well,
cigarette,
yeah.
in a trash can. I'm just saying, you gotta define it.
Defined, but you definitely don't want it to turn into a parking lot.
I'm not talking parking lot, I'm talking about it will just be a pervious surface with nothing, there's nothing to
It'll
activate that
just be
space.
gravel and a metal.
Yeah,
We could do it as simple as just saying, to include hardscaping for, pedestrian, personal use, whatever, up to
So if I
X
put
percent,
gravel pad with a
whatever.
bench in it. That's, 10 feet wide and 6 feet deep.
Well, and
It
most
should
of
be
those spaces
considered.
have to be accessible.
Right, but
They have
you know
to
my
be
spot, you did it.
Mhm.
So that run right through there, I got kind of the berm cut in there and instead of trying to plant grass there, if I'd said, no, I'm just gonna throw some pavers down on a bench. Then some.
Downtown has that provision in it for
Right.
to count the hardscape, to count, so you could start with that. It'll
But-
give you somewhere to start with how to give
Mhm.
credits.
So,
It's that walkable versus not walkable. What's the benefit to the city to grant the variance? I mean, that's typically what you
well,
deal with that.
right.
Right, but not everybody is. And
Right,
so you
but
just gotta
if
look
people
at
are
this.
either side of me. If
Right.
we can sell it to them and say, really, all you gotta do is just, some of this will help and some of that'll help. I'm not worried about me, I'm worried about them.
So, and I've got some language that we could at least start picking through from other jurisdictions.
Great.
It's not great, but it's an example.
It's always easier to steal it than it is to write it yourself.
Yes.
And if you could get photo examples, it'd be kind of nice to see what that actually looks like in like a developed site. Because I know it'd be helpful for the planning commission, because they're gonna say, I don't know what this looks like on the ground. The city council will be like, I don't know what this looks like. So having those, even if it's not in the code, it's part of your,
This is what this means.
right.
This is what we're talking about. This, I mean, because we're gonna have to go sell this, so they're gonna go, I'm not worth this hard and not sit there and say, look, busting our asses on this, so you
Well,
might
and-
listen.
I would much rather have a landscape that people use than a landscape that people just. It's just kind of sad. You put a lot of money and time and effort into something that
Right now, the kids abuse it.
Yeah.
Over-
you get somebody in there that has a little bit of pride. And if somebody's sitting on a bench and they see some kid over there breaking something, they might say something. More likely. All right.
We can vote, you're right. Okay, well, if you can find those,
Okay.
shoot them to us. Send everything to Tina and she'll distribute. Anything else? Before we have to eat brownies, Lynn?
I'm not taking them home, so somebody is. Oh, good,
Oh, wait, one. I am.
good.
I just haven't reached it yet. I can see it's tented your way. Okay, so I think 050 has had some stuff kicked around, right? And then next time we'll move into 060 and some.
The mulch is your next big one.
Oh, don't get him started.
I was gonna say, you don't have to do it tonight, but don't forget it, because that's a talking point, I know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to excuse myself, folks, so, hope
Good night,
that's okay.
Andy.
All right, thank you. Night.
Good evening.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Andy.
Don't change things too much.
Don't worry.
Rewrite it all before the next meeting.
Sweet, I'm done.
Right.
You just volunteered. is that
I heard
what
it.
you
No, I said we. I said we. We'll rewrite it all before the next meeting.
Yeah, the royal we.
heard? So I noticed that the heights are still on the deciduous trees.
No, that's why I said these may not, I put the notes at the bottom of the page at the end of the section. I have not updated the code yet.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted to try and find that. Yeah, so on page 26 for 050, you'll see the notes and it talks about reducing the shrub heights, and I may have missed the other, but I have it on my index one. I thought the trees were already taken care of. I thought it was just the shrubs that had to be changed,
Okay,
but we can
where
look at
where
that.
is mulch?
23.
He's earmarking that page.
Right at the top.
Ground cover and mulch.
So I'm making a note for January?
Code.
Or are you
Yeah.
doing it now?
Well, I'm on it right now.
Okay.
Right here, industrial zone, usually less. Rock, gravel, everything around.
Been on the road frontage.
We've had rock and mulch long before this was written. Never blown away. So, but the truth is, we have these planting beds. Now that we've gotten rid of perennials, the number of planting beds goes down. So let's say one landscape a lot, you're not quite have perennials. There's a reason you can't grass up to your shrubs and your,
I don't like it,
I know you don't like it.
but, and it causes issues with trees, especially when you have guys that are out weeding
Yeah,
and they start hitting the
So-
trunks of the tree.
like at my house, I've got these tree rings, mat things.
We had talked about requiring a certain amount of edging and
Right, around. the
ground
tree.
cover
Right.
rather than grass around the trees and shrubs. What can be a combination of more
But-
than. How do you,
So, which, organic versus inorganic mulches. I know what's happened on my lot. I bring up an example because that's where I live. But I can see that if it was like a bark mulch, it would have long blown away and always been a nuisance. So it's worked. So my question is, how do we define it so that it works, so that there's alternatives, options, menu that fulfills the requirements? That's my question.
I thought someone was working on that. Was Peter gonna be working on how to create,
he
to
wanted
do
to-
that flexibility?
I think so, because he talked about the city of Anchorage has a standard.
So to find that standard that's clear but functional and, on a tree ring, why can't you use the rubber ones?
Yeah, you can, there's different materials. you
Yeah.
can use edging and things like that, or you can use the concrete ring.
Well, and then I think what Tim had said, I remember there was a conversation, and I don't know, I'll say it wrong, but it's probably, you either put rock mulch around the trees or vegetative mulch and then the grass further out from that. So it gives you that separation from when I'm weed eating the edge. I'm not anywhere close to the tree. I still have some kind of a mulch bed regardless of whether it's rock
A
or
buffer,
bark.
right?
It creates that,
But if the goal
put
is
that
to
option in there.
protect the tree, I get it. In my case where it's just shrubs. The shrubs are only great.
I think grass needs to be separated. It really does, or it encroaches, it.
Grass and shrubs. Oh, I agree.
It-
I
and I-
think grass is worse than
well-
shrubs than,
Because when you have parks, it's nice to have grass up to the edge of the tree so people can sit under the tree on the
Right.
grass.
but it has to be the right tree too.
Yep.
Because if they're,
And this gets back to professionals know what trees go in which spaces so that you don't have issues with the root systems, things like that. And I mean, on our plans, we naturally put tree rings around all our trees that are in grass areas. So this comes back again to the benefit of having a professional do these
Right.
designs.
but how do you get that for,
That's the problem.
right?
And
But you can do a graphic. Show a tree.
Well, and we also talked about, when we got back to this, is making sure that the planning specs are in there. Because you can ruin some great landscaping with some bad planning.
Installation and maintenance or the depth of like
Right.
good landscape design.
And then irrigation, we talked about that a little bit too. Do you have any kind of a maintenance plan where's your water supply? How far away? Cause if it's 300 feet of hose, just to water a plant, they gotta get watered.
So is the city willing to adopt construction details?
The city will adopt if they adopt. It's our job to spend them out there.
So that actually solves a lot of problems. If you have standard details for specific things
If
like.
we say that we think this should be in the code, that when their
Mhm.
permit set, they should have.
Right, well, they usually, lots of cities have design manuals.
Right.
And then all it is just a bunch of construction details. It specifies everything that the city wants within their city limits. And most of the time, most lay people can read that.
Well,
It's very specific.
what I'm saying is if you have this many shrub sizes, and this many tree sizes, the specs aren't that deep. Are
Right,
they?
they're simple, yeah,
I mean,
landscape specs are simple.
That's what I'm saying, just a couple pages, not much.
Yeah.
Some nice doodles.
Well, and I'm talking like actual construction specs. It says
these are your dimensions,
You're talking about the whole.
this is what you need to do.
Your soil amendment, whatever.
And when somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got a 200 square foot shack I'm putting up, Tina can say, there you go, build it like this. And you can hand those to your contractors.
You're done.
But the specs don't have any maximums or minimums. They don't.
As
Meaning
far-
as far as plantings or widths or numbers or types or quantities,
well-
those are more, do they? I mean, that's,
Well, I mean, it
question.
depends on what you put on and what you're talking about. I mean, it's definitely appropriate to have text, but graphics are usually a lot more understandable for people. So
no,
I'm
graphics
talking
are
about,
good.
I'm talking about like, so like we're talking about how to protect the trees. So to provide a tree ring detail.
Yeah.
If it's,
Are those in mass already?
yeah, I think so.
Is there a plagiarizable source for those?
Oh, I'm sure
Public
there is.
domain,
Yeah,
because most time if it's in a city code somewhere,
Mhm.
you can legally steal it.
you can
I'll
look
bet
up,
you that that
almost
came from somewhere.
every city that I've worked in has got these
What
details.
are they called?
They're
Construction details.
construction details or design manuals or,
Standard detail.
yeah, design
But it wouldn't
details.
require a landscape architect for the person that just wants to come and put a small business up, would it?
Well,
Small.
I don't know, I just,
Can
I would say to
can I
do
show
that
you what I'm
too.
talking about?
Oh, yeah,
People
Where
that
are you?
want to.
Go
Where do you wanna
go to Douglas County, Nevada,
Hey, not local.
not in Google.
Not on the map.
Just in regular Google. And I'm just using this because this is where I've been working for sure.
So is it off their
Okay.
homepage that you
Yeah,
get to the link?
go to community.
Oops.
That's right. It's fine. Go ahead. too. So go to doing business
Oh, wait.
up at the top,
Got it.
and then you want to go to community development, design codes and design criteria,
Up, up,
up,
Up,
right,
down one.
down.
up, okay.
They change this website every like 4 days. So, okay, go back.
No,
So they've
that's not
moved it.
Okay.
Okay, go down to go back to that same spot.
Doing business.
Go to Douglas County Standard Construction Details.
That's
Go that one. Scroll down. So if you look at,
Oh, I got all kinds of stuff tucked in.
oh yeah. Scroll down.
That's driveway access, water system.
This makes things very easy. Scroll up. Keep going and keep going. Oh, said they change this every day. Okay, go to,
Is it the street improvement, the local section?
no, it's
No,
not the
or
one I
two?
was looking for.
No? Okay.
Go to the city of Reno has some good ones too. That one might actually be better. Everything I have is all bookmarked.
Oh,
I can't find it.
ooh, wow. Ooh, police presence, Reno. Behave, don't come here, you don't break the law. That's what I got from that.
Go
Now have a good time while you're here.
Yeah, right?
But don't forget, we're watching.
Oh,
That's sorry.
there.
It's the best subliminal messaging.
I know, it's true, huh?
It's not- it's totally
Um,
under
Let's see.
their development services department. Have it, or building, no, I don't see building.
Under code,
Business.
like I said, I have everything. Go to try development services. I have everything bookmarked, so. Okay, go
Go
back,
back, say you'd think they'd have it
Back to
somewhere.
business.
go to business and then go to development services. Oh, there is full code. Now go down, it should be.
Or the zoning code, is that what you're talking about?
Let's see.
I think it'd be in their zoning code, but
Yeah, it just seems intense.
building code is more how to build your building.
Engineering and planning applications, try that. Sorry, I'm not prepared here.
Sure.
Might have to just send a link. Might have to find it and send a link because everything's
That'd be cool.
varied, but it literally, it's a detail and it shows, here's your sidewalk. Here's your parkways, here's a parking finger. This is what it needs to look like. And it just makes things
Or here's
so
a
simple.
tree hole, here's how far you dig.
Yeah,
Well, those are that kind of things that pass for sure, right?
yeah, and we have them on our plans. I mean, that's something that we naturally do. So, I mean, you can talk to Peter, maybe we could just take some of our standard details.
Well, so not copy, right? Throw it out.
Yeah, these aren't the ones that I was thinking of.
No, I was just gonna go see what it looked like.
But yeah, I mean, this is simple. That's a road section.
So that's just the
No, that's
road
what-
itself.
That's where the muni got it.
Yeah, it's,
There's a whole lot of borrowing.
but what this does is it keeps people from arguing. Well, what does it look like? I don't know. And then they interpret things. This is your curb, this is your gutter. And it can be just very simple like that, but anybody can look at that and go, okay, I can see.
Yeah.
I think that might help.
I'm a picture guy whenever possible.
And I've come across some codes that have those, some of the examples that you guys have had, I haven't looked at them recently. But I can try and find some in there because they show what it looks like from the
Right,
top down.
yeah, you could
So you
probably
can see
even
the distribution.
Google like a standard tree planting detail.
Yeah.
So those things are very, very simple, but can really communicate a lot of information
looky here.
for everybody. Yeah, see?
Yeah, but that's that. So it's that bed and how the components of the bed interact with each other. So that one helps you put the tree in the ground, but so it's probably more a landscape bed detail. maybe.
Well-
Oh, I think those are necessary too.
Yeah, no, they are too.
Well, you
yeah.
just,
But we
what I
don't
do is I
prescribe
take
that.
those and I add sidewalks to the graphic. And I mean, you can add whatever information you want to these. But this tells everybody, this is how wide your bed needs to be. And it's just like the street section that you looked at, gives you widths. You can put a soil section, this is your depth. This is what you need to do.
Yeah, and we don't regulate the planting, the depths, all of that. So whatever you guys have on the plans is the way that they're,
Right.
I mean, it's subject to
But-
that kind of,
Right, but what I'm saying is if you look at this, so like this one here might be, that's a bioretention swale. It's like, but it's got, you've got your sidewalk here, and you can show dimensions, you can show whatever you want on there and you customize everything. But
So
what I'm saying is that is something that people can read. So when you're worried about these people who are coming in who don't need a professional designer, you can point them to these and say, this is what it needs to look like.
like part of the code.
Yeah.
These are the minimums.
And it's simple and
And then
that's,
the code done by a professional needs to include planting specs or
Mhm.
whatever
right,
as part of their
So-
product.
right. So we will produce stuff that's specific to,
So if you're 5,000 square feet, then you, or more, you need.
well, and the stuff that you put in the code is critical stuff that needs to be done.
Right.
So if it's in the code, you can, if you say, this is what a tree looks like, this is how
Here's how planning should be done.
you put an image in there, because that is understandable by everybody. You don't have to be somebody who's been doing this forever to
And
understand.
if you don't understand that, you probably shouldn't be. Just say. To that level.
But I don't know, that's a thought. And this project, the problems keep coming up with the people who don't understand how to do.
well, the illustrations are good. I don't have a problem with those because I think they're very helpful and I've always liked the code that had illustrations. This one just didn't. What the issue with the mulch is how do you prevent a 10-foot wide bed of just a few plantings with rock mulch? So it's how do you craft that requirement to have that mix of surface types and material types versus, because that's what the end result is coming in with a 10-foot bed. I can get you a dozen photos of in town. You can just drive around and see. So a lot of it is just gravel with a few trees
So I've
dying in it.
seen it where they've had a required amount of vegetated surface cover. So you say your beds have to be a minimum of 30% vegetated surface cover.
That's what I was saying,
within
to give the flexibility, but have some minimums.
Class of 3 years or what.
Mhm.
And then your mulch really doesn't matter, because if you've got all this vegetated cover, then your mulch is covered. up,
Right,
but
it's an accent instead of the predominant feature. yeah.
So just, so you could just do that.
And that'll also help when we figure out how to get that, the varying widths of planting beds, allowing grass in there. That's gonna help a lot with that as well. But I get what you're saying. You have 10-foot wide beds, completely full of rock, and you have a tree every 30 feet, 5 shrubs, and a few branches in there, yes.
So if you have a minimum amount of vegetated cover, you could put the whole thing in rock. And then you don't have the issue with your mulch blowing away.
Right.
Because within a couple of years, you're gonna have a vegetated cover there.
Why do we want a 500-foot wide longer in Shops at Sun Mountain's case along the perimeter, a 2,000 or 1,200 square foot or foot long by 10-foot wide bed of gravel at the edge? I mean, how is that attractive? And that's still expensive, isn't it? Filling that hole, with
Well,
I mean, that
It
bed with
is,
ground?
but you have wind issues, you have.
I'm
storm
saying
issues.
grass or some other kind
Yeah,
of
something
surface, an evergreen creeping ground cover or something
Right, well,
instead of
and
the
that's-
gravel.
And then that's where
Vegetated
that
surface.
Yeah.
vegetated surface comes, and you got
Yeah.
this vegetated cover where 30% of it is covered with vegetation of some sort within.
120-foot long strip.
Yeah, but yours has some
It's
curvature to it and some
There's some
interest,
difference.
visual interest, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so, and you
So-
have vegetated cover.
Right.
Mhm.
I
So,
mean, some of mine will never completely cover it.
mhm.
So I like to try and keep my rocks looking good. This year's been a little rough. But, so
Right.
it's not what it is, it's how it's done.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So try to find how it's done.
Right.
Helps.
But,
And I see the gravel strip is not very cute.
and I know that has been a big issue for us. The problem is people say, I put bark mulch there, within a couple months, it's gonna all be blown away.
And
Or-
it's a little bit, I think it's more expensive, bark mulch is, especially with large quantities.
It's,
More
well,
expensive
and
than-
it's, you have to do a lot of
And you have a
it.
lot of maintenance.
Right. I
So,
mean, rocks, depends on the size of the rock, quality of the rock, can be just as bad, but it ain't blown away.
yeah, so if it's covered,
Real fill in.
who cares how much?
Yeah,
rock
it'll
you
get
got?
weeds
Yeah.
all over it, right?
So, because we had some landscape cloth, I mean, geotechnical, the heavy stuff.
Mhm.
And about every 2-3 years, we're gonna pull up the edges and sift it, throw it back down, because the sand from the parking lot is blown in or swept in. You know, and the dirt just gets blown in and it starts to, do the thing that nature does and just mat together. But
Well,
that's when you haul out the high school kids and you get to sifting.
you do a very good job. Most commercial,
They won't touch it.
they won't touch it.
But that's the truth with anything.
Right,
If you can take any pride in it,
maintenance is
it's
the
everything.
key. So if you have ground cover,
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for lower maintenance, the truth is, if you can keep your mulch to a minimum and have an evergreen mulch or something like that, or ground cover,
Cover.
whatever word I'm trying to use.
Yeah.
And it grows and you water it, and we're good.
So here's Walmart, and their vegetation's grown in a lot since this picture. I'm not even sure what year this picture is. Yeah,
and the bottom.
I'm not. It is, it's too small to see. It says 2022, but I know it's not, because I was just out there.
Not a chance.
It's much more vegetated looking than this.
Well, and that's gotta be what,
See, that's all rock.
that's 9 feet wide, 10 feet wide, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
parking
it's
spots
about 10
usually.
feet wide.
Parking spots are 9 feet normally, and that looks a little wider. Yeah, it's not bad.
But then you see this to where this is grass and then you just have an isolated pipe. So here's a question I've always struggled with, and Marie, you and Peter could be helpful with this, is I get that you need a certain amount of pervious surface around a tree and even a shrub. Well, 10 foot is the normal bed width that you see in almost every landscape code across the country. Is 10 foot wide. It's very common to find. Well, why? what's the magic about 10 feet? Why can't it be 0 feet at some point and then flesh out like, I mean, why can't it be like grassed areas and then there's a pocket of landscaping and then there's, more grassed areas? Why is it this continuous run type thing with 10 feet? I know there's this, for trees to thrive, they need so much, but why
Right.
can't it just be a bulbed out area that's wider or it encroaches into the grass area to pull that in?
Most people
Versus-
do it because the parking lots are adjacent to the roads. They Want to have some sort of vegetated or some sort of buffer between the headlights that are,
No, I get that, but 10 feet, what's the
It's-
magic with 10 feet? Why can't it be 5 feet? I mean, the city
It
lot,
can-
we did it with 5.
yeah, it can be.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what's the downside? Because then you don't have that sea of gravel. You still have the bed. They're clustered tighter together,
So-
which gives it a more dense
So
appearance
make your
maybe.
minimum bed width 5 feet.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Is there a
She's
downside to that?
wondering,
What
yeah.
is the?
No,
Or-
not really. I mean, you think a parking finger, center parking finger is 6 by 4.
Ours are 10 by 20, but
Right, but that's a standard one that,
It's too wide,
I mean,
but
that was because that was the minimum to support the trees.
right.
in it.
So you just make it the minimum width and. Yeah. I mean, I see them 5 feet minimums.
Okay, I'm just curious, because I mean, it's come up, Anchorage was brought up to where they allow you to get, but no less than 6 feet or 8 feet or something. So I'm just like, is there a magic
at some
number?
point
that
it no
you-
longer supports anything, big enough root system.
Right,
Right.
other than grass maybe, but
Well, and even grass, if you get it too small, then it just becomes a pain to maintain.
I was just curious. That's why I
Yeah.
said, because I mean, 10's just, I inherited 10 for 20 years of planning. It's always been 10 feet.
Mhm.
I don't know the why.
There is no, that's just what people have always done. See, that's what they inherited.
I mean, like the code in the current code seems to push you in that direction, whether you got enough trees to fill it in or not. you don't
Right.
have-
If you want to talk age of this structure, look where the Extreme Fun Center
Oh,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how old it is.
Yeah. So sometimes what happens is they'll put detention facilities in those spaces too. So
Mhm.
that's sometimes why, you get wider beds
That's a sea of
between.
gravel up
And
there.
we'll see more of that when our stormwater requirements start
Right.
kicking in.
The north end of the parking lot
Oh, yeah.
there, just gravel
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah, that is just
Oh, right there.
all the way across.
All the way across.
I would,
That's pretty though.
I
I had a planning-
hate snow storage and landscaping, hate it.
Yeah.
It just fills in with gravel.
That's why I don't like doing it.
That's why I like your design.
I don't like doing it.
I love
somewhere
your
else.
design.
But this isn't even their snow storage area. So that's
No.
not why they did that. They push it in the back.
Yeah, put
Yeah.
your snow storage in a.
Yeah.
But it's low
Like
maintenance.
Target has that one side where that's where they store all their
Yeah,
snow,
stack it.
and it's fantastic.
They pay to stack it.
Yeah, well, that's like
So
something.
my design.
We
if it
looked out
snows heavy,
that
I'm gonna
big
have to
hole
stack
out
it.
there.
Yeah, there you go. You got a
But
natural.
we overparked you so that
You
you
need to
could,
sell.
put snow
People
storage
bring
in
it to
those
your
spaces.
site, and put snow in,
Anybody done that?
but
I've seen,
make some
I'm
income.
just prepared.
Talk to Karen.
Talk to
I
Karen.
want the space to maybe haul it or stack it. I'm prepared. Because I know my minimums and I know what we're capable of in terms of business. I mean, I'm parking real fast, but.
well,
it. If
that's
we
where you
can.
need the guys with the 4-wheel drives that can, like side
Yeah,
parking and stuff with the big
yeah.
suspensions. Display area, that's what you.
Yes, it's a vehicle
It's
display.
all
area.
about marketing.
Yes, we were selling somebody else's vehicle.
Yeah, but-
For a few months. So yeah, that whole lot to the north of,
Yeah, that's their snow lot.
Mhm. I think it's great.
They actually,
yeah, let's do the job.
'Cause, yeah,
Makes it all perk for it. It's the,
yeah, it's not really true.
right. Because it doesn't perk, it just runs. Anything else tonight?
so does the vegetated percentage of vegetative cover in a planting bed, does that fix the mulch issue? To kind of go back to what we were talking about,
Versus the sea of gravel?
right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I'm
I
just
think
saying
it
there's,
does.
there's,
I
yeah.
think it does, because if you say, okay, you have a planting bed with this many square feet, it has to be so much populated, otherwise pull the gravel, put some freaking grass in there, or put more plants in it.
Right,
Either way, it
and-
solves it.
And vegetative cover is grass and shrubs, and what you might need to do is define,
Vegetative cover.
right?
Mhm.
It's shrubs or grass or ground covers, nothing like trees, you wouldn't consider a vegetative cover.
So currently, the code doesn't allow for regular grass, and you have to, that has to be decorative grass to count towards your landscaping area.
Well, and I
There's
think-
a loophole in there with the definition that allows that grass to count in there.
Okay.
It just can't be all grass. So
Yeah.
like where Walmart had that whole, lawn
Yeah,
of
we're not-
grass,
Right.
doesn't all count, but if it has some plantings and the code doesn't say how much of that area has to have plantings to count.
well,
But you're gonna end up with an issue where you're trying to figure out how much area you could have grass, how much area you need to plant your plants. and how
well,
you
you've already
calculate
got
that
your
towards the
perimeter
total
beds
amount
that are required,
required, right?
right?
Mhm.
And it requires shrubs and trees, so you're not gonna have grass there technically. And you've got, so you've already got some beds that are required, so why couldn't you have grass?
I mean,
No, there's no problem with grass.
Right.
It's
Should
how
have
do you
lots of grass.
prevent the 10-foot running bed of gravel? Is more the aesthetic piece of it that's not appealing from a street view. I don't think it's gonna benefit the city in the long run, because again, creative designs like
Well,
Chris has,
there is, I think
curvilinear beds
you
and
pretty much
combinations.
just have to talk about planting bed density.
Mhm.
And if it's planting bed density versus grass. Because your grass should count for your vegetated space, your landscape
Right.
space. But you have to have X percent of planting bed with X percentage of density.
Mhm.
I think you've solved it. Don't you?
Yeah.
And
And
you
then,
make it simple enough to go, okay, I got this much landscaping, I have to, percentage is planting beds. And then within that planting bed, I gotta have X many trees to get it done.
well, and you've got your planting bed, required planting beds defined in the code already.
Yeah.
So whatever you do beyond that is up to you.
Right.
And that goes back to the bell bottom leisure suit theory, whether you think that seed grass is beautiful, which some people do, or whether you think the planting beds are beautiful. And if you have a minimum vegetated cover requirements for your required planting beds, then that gets rid of the risk of having just a sea of gravel with a couple little shrubs here.
I think it's density within your planting. I think that's the metric that solves it.
And then how to give the flexibility to do a curvilinear bed or some kind of
You're
ovals
not,
or
it
whatever.
doesn't matter.
As long as you have an appropriate buffer around as soon as that root zone, you're good.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
So you just have to revise the 10-foot to say, again, is it 10 feet wide or is it 5 feet wide? What is that area that percentage of has to
So
be
what-
I have to
planted?
say,
So what
10 foot wide must be reserved for landscaping, that can be made up of grass, mulches, ground cover.
Well, you can do
And
an
X amount of trees,
average,
X amount of
an
shrubs.
average minimum width of 5 feet.
Okay. Or while maintaining appropriate root zone. So if you're gonna taper it down enough, then you put some skinnier shrubs on this end.
Well,
Move your
depending on how
bigger-
narrow it is, you don't
Yeah.
have anything, but, yeah. I mean,
There's nobody there, might as well
that
grass it.
way, if you, because I know people who square is beautiful. They like square. I know people who curvilinear is beautiful. They like curvilinear. So that's an aesthetic.
Right.
Decision.
No, but right now the code doesn't give you a choice. It says it's a 10-foot wide, which
Right.
makes you a
I think-
rectangle along
So
the
if you
roadway.
do a 5-foot average or something like that. Or,
Yeah, I don't care what the answer is.
Or
I'm just saying you need to
or
prescribe out,
percentage.
just
So
right,
give the options to do something
If you
different.
call out, you need to have 10 foot wide landscape. And it has to be made up of, right now, it has to be X amount of shrubs, X amount of trees and
Mhm.
ground cover, right? So in that ground cover, can be up to X percentage of grass. And all planting beds for trees, shrubs, have to be X amount
Well,
average.
Divide them
now
all
that we
together.
got rid of the perennial
Right.
issue, maybe what you do is get rid of all of that and say you have an average minimum width of 5 feet with a 40 or 50% vegetated cover within 3 years. And then you have flexibility of doing ground covers, you can do grass, you can do shrubs, you can do whatever, but you don't have a sea of gravel. And it gets away from the confusing parts of,
We're just talking ground cover, or are you talking now the plantings in the bed?
I'm talking like planting beds.
No, the
Mhm.
plants in the bed or the ground cover in the bed?
Or are we talking about
So,
landscape?
so top dressing is the material, it's the rock, it's the bark mulch, it's whatever.
No, I get that. I'm
Right.
saying, what are you saying?
I'm-
Leave it open to be flexible. Are you saying you don't even have a minimum number of shrubs and trees
Right.
either?
So you've got shrubs.
So you can have some lots with no trees?
You've got shrubs that are this wide.
Mhm.
So, but
Trees are still required in the code, you gotta figure where to put them.
Well, but that's
So-
what I'm asking. Are we
Right.
proposing that you take that off the table
Well-
and then now you're coming up with some kind of a creative scenario?
right, so that's what I'm
You've gotta-
saying, like, if you have a minimum vegetated cover, you can do whichever kind of size of shrubs you want. And, you can do something big, like what you have in your beds, or you can do
Perfect.
multiple narrower shrubs. But you've still got this minimum cover, which gets rid of the risk of having a seed crop.
Is that back to the 15%?
So this would get back
Out
to,
toward the 15%.
right, so say you've got a perimeter bed that's required already. And you say, okay, the minimum width is 5 feet. The bed must have a minimum of 50% vegetated cover within 3 years. So that means you can have 3 shrubs close together that equal 6 or 8 feet wide, or you can have one large lilac or something that's the same width. But you're still maintaining that minimum cover, which gets
There's
rid
X
of.
amount of vegetation on my rocks for me.
Right, because the rocks will be covered by your vegetated cover.
So it'd be helpful if you could get an example then. Maybe you can send me that link to Reno or whatever that you're talking about.
Because what I'm basically hearing out of you, and tell me if I'm not trying to layman speak correctly. So what I see, I got a lot. I'm gonna develop it. So I know I gotta have perimeter beds and buffers.
Mhm.
So, and then of that landscaping is trees, shrubs, planting beds and grass. 'Cause that's my formula. And then I mean, my buffering, that's good. On commercial all the way around, whatever. So I know I need a buffer up here. So in that, if we say, okay, call a planting bed, define that as a dirt patch, you put your trees and stuff in, put a mulch around versus grass. Non-planting bed, but still vegetative space.
Right, because we're not taking out the code required planting beds.
Right, but let's say I get my, I meet my dimensions here, but I wanna go wider and then I wanna go narrower and then I wanna go here. And I still meet my
Right,
guidelines, but I have this swale or whatever.
so if you say minimum of 5 feet wide, which means you can go, or an average of 5 feet
No.
wide.
So my question then becomes, are you talking about the planting bed?
Or the.
Are we talking about the landscaped buffer?
So the landscape buffer per the code is a planting bed.
Okay,
Then, so in that case, so
for
if you
the
need,
current code, what about?
if you need a
what we're
15-foot buffer, you have 15-foot wide planting bed, and you end up with a sea of gravel.
What I'm saying is, can
Right,
we,
but if you put plants on top of the gravel, now you've got a
But you-
wind resistant top dressing that in 3 to 5 years, based on whatever we write in the code, is gonna be 50% of it's gonna be covered with.
the issue that Tina's bringing up is that if you put the required amount of plantings, that's minimum in there. You have all this gravel and you don't have 50%.
Well, no, but that's where the code
Cover.
comes, that's where the cover comes in. So you can take a lilac, big lilac, that'll provide the same amount of vegetated coverage as
Oh, I got you.
3 little shrubs.
what I'm asking is,
these deals. Depends on-
Well, this comes into,
Projections.
you have to know what plants you're planting.
Right.
And you have to be able to prove that you're going to provide the cover over the gravel so that you don't have to see it.
And then my question is, so we have this here, can we by code shrink up the gravel area and put in grass instead of gravel? Okay.
And that's what I was thinking too.
And, but we want to make sure, so I'm required X amount by number of trees and shrubs. Well, inside that, they're gonna fill this space, and what I'm hearing, group wise, is that we would rather that gravel area be smaller and have more stuff in it, by density wise. Or coverage. Coverage versus all of this being gravel, let's put some grass in there. Credit for the grass, minimize our gravel. Or mulch, whatever. And still meet the aesthetics.
Right, because, well, and you still have the requirements for providing some sort of vertical buffer from the road. So you still have to have some sort of shrub.
Right.
Bed there somehow.
Right.
Like that strip along Walmart,
Mhm.
okay? That's an ungodly wide strip of gravel. They could have, and I think they should have. Pushed that gravel to the north. Done something aesthetic there, and then made this all grass. I think they've been easier to maintain, especially when you already have some out there mowing.
Well, I can't even imagine trying to mow those slopes. That's just ridiculous.
That's somebody with a special mower, I guarantee that.
It's,
And they go up and down.
yeah, those zero turn mowers.
Yeah, that's just,
Yeah.
but you've
Yeah.
got some
I don't know.
serious slopes there, so you gotta do
You're
something to
correct.
stabilize it.
You're not wrong. But I'm talking about the north end up here,
Mhm.
just that phase C of gray.
Right,
Had a topsoil, I had a bunch of rock.
yeah. So see,
They all never get to that end.
right, so if you had a minimum vegetative coverage, you know, say 30% of that would be covered in vegetation rather than gravel.
Right.
However you do it, you do it. That's where your creativity and your flexibility comes in.
What I'm saying is, how does it read so that this guy understands?
So I would do a graphic.
Okay, so you have, how many square feet is that? What is that? 5,000 square feet, how much is that? I mean, it's a lot. So let's call it
Each
5.
parking spot's 10 feet wide.
6 or
by
7
20.
acres.
Right, but just this strip,
Right.
that we're gonna use this strip, so that was an example.
20, 30, 40 feet wide, you think?
Sure.
Yeah, 40 feet wide, but.
There's a lot of dirt.
Pretty long.
And just for example, so of just that, not the parking lot, just that. And we're looking at this saying, okay, we think that much gravel is done. Okay. We think you should have grass in there in half that space versus the gravel. How do you give them credit for calling that landscaped area? And how do we say, okay, we want you to have,
So the way that the
How do
code
you-
is
how do you-
written
not
is,
this one, how do we tell it to be written in a way that makes that look good?
so I think.
Sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's all right. So we've got, if we say minimum or an average minimum width. And you still have to provide whatever we decide the vertical vegetated material is gonna be.
Yep.
So,
So I got X many trees.
right, so you provide that and trees, roots can grow into the grass. That's not a big.
Sure, but they need a
Right.
buffer area to
So
start.
but what that does is, you know, as long as you can provide the vegetation that's going in to serve the function, which is buffering the headlights from your road, whatever, then whatever you do outside of whatever you need to provide that buffer is up to you. You can put grass in.
Okay, so this is kind of an example of, it's not a great one, but it's the best one that we have. So what you're talking about to screen the headlights from the road, and it's more, actually, the hedges are not as much, they're light from the road, but they're screening asphalt parking lots is really what it's aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's to make it more attractive from the road versus the headlights. The headlights come into play in some places, but a lot of places doesn't matter at all. But you see how if we just pretended this was a 10-foot wide strip, they have pockets of beds with gravel.
Yeah.
And then they have grass, and then they have another bed with gravel, and it's got some fairly density.
Is
and then
that
they go back
rock?
to grass.
So.
It is rock
So
in
what you
there.
could do is say for every 100 lineal feet of road frontage, you need to have so many shrubs. And you have one tree for every 30 lineal feet and 3 shrubs, but you don't specify it has to be this long lineal. You can do
Right,
that.
yeah, we've already talked about that, but how do you stop them from connecting these areas with a 10-foot run of gravel to the 10-foot?
Well,
Is that, are
You
those big
can't.
rocks?
Yeah, I think they are, actually, I think they're
I know we're
boulders.
trying to
Those are
stay
the,
away from it, but on the same
keep
side,
the
it's
machines
kind of going back
Gotcha.
to the bell-bottom tracksuit, that, hey,
Right.
maybe I like bunch rock. I mean, down south,
now it's a
you know,
tracksuit.
they don't put a whole lot of grass out there,
Right.
especially in arid areas. I mean, it's rock everywhere.
Yeah,
Mhm. And
I mean,
that's
usually
that's
nice fruit and
where-
stuff, but-
that's where that vegetated cover benefit comes in. Is if you don't want to have grass, which I do no grass. It's just a
Oh.
waste of money.
Oh,
You're not allowed, are you?
Oh, yeah. But it's stupid.
it's expensive.
It's expensive. You
Horrible
have to
thing.
water it, you have to fertilize it, it burns up, it looks terrible.
Yeah, but up here, grass is easy in the summertime, and you don't have to mow it all the time.
Exactly.
So it's really a pretty
But-
low maintenance.
but-
area.
but-
I'm just saying,
but-
though,
I know,
Right,
I
that's what
know.
I'm saying, like, if
It's
you,
regional.
I use a lot of juniper ground cover down there.
Mhm,
And it's a green, evergreen
mhm.
ground cover, and within 5 years, it fills in these huge beds with one single.
Why don't we use it up here?
Because they don't grow well.
Because I've never seen one proposed up here, but I've seen them. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they don't do well with the snow cover and stuff. They usually end up dying. But,
Yeah.
I mean, but we do have ground covers that could work up here.
Hmm.
So, that's where you can get some variety, you can get some seasonal color, and
I think we just gotta figure out how you
How
write
you
it to
communicate.
where-
Right.
and to where it's meeting the requirement of either, your
Mhm.
buffers, your perimeter landscaping, your.
But I think we could definitely, I mean,
if you get there.
if you did something like that, you could definitely have some sort of varying factor if you wanted, or you could have a square one. Work with engineers, they like squares.
Oh, yes, they do. You can draw it with a ruler. That'd be a ruler, or,
But it's funny, because to them, that's beautiful.
right, they're all weird.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Camera side.
It's define weird. Sometimes weird's good.
Oh, we're all.
Except below the track.
Oh, yes,
so you
we
can-
I was gonna say.
Well, now it's a velour track.
Everybody's judging you.
It's blue. It's
It went from bell-bottom tracksuit
Symmetry. I like
to
symmetry.
bell-bottom leisure suit, to bell-bottom tracksuit, to velour tracksuit.
Yeah, see? It's
No,
all
actually,
the
What are
same.
you wearing?
Mine is
I'm actually pretty art brained for engineer.
Yeah, yeah.
honestly.
Hot
You at
pink.
least got dressed. I mean, some of these guys,
I,
a lot of my good friends are engineers. I gotta razz them all.
I got half my family's artists, half the other half's are engineers, so it's kind of,
So,
Well, that's interesting. So you're either left or right brain, huh?
yeah, I mean, I got a little bit of both, I guess is what I'm trying to
Lucky
say.
you.
yeah, I've worked on your projects, they're good.
I'm not too bad.
But
Gotta keep my-
you need to have that kind of like straight and narrow, because curvilinear storm drain pipes
No,
aren't great.
Oh,
I can't make, yeah.
Curvilinear, retention swells, a good idea.
Mhm.
Show me how to design that cat. Without taking years.
Crayon.
Line.
Crayon.
It's not easy.
The dreaded slide.
No, we,
Or-
so, actually, a perfect
Steinway.
example of that is fish passage culverts. When they put in infill,
Yeah.
they like to see spurs and a meandering stream through
Because
it.
it changes the grades.
How do you design, you make a flow line from point X to point B early on in your design? It's gotta be a certain percentage, and now you're lengthening it by putting a curve through it.
Driving an engineer out, aren't you?
Yeah, that's me.
It's
And
fun.
then you have to deal with the surface underneath. It affects flow too. Yeah, oh yeah.
So you draw your flow line. And then your tops, I get to work on these on the Clemson River. So
Oh.
the tops are varying width, so you don't do an offset.
Right.
You
right.
just do a freehand kind of meandering, and then your slopes vary.
Yeah, and I've gotten away with it where we have a flow, but then we make a channel that's made with a rotable material, and you let the stream cut its way through.
Oh, it's
Oh, that's kind of
cool.
cool.
That nature did it, it's not your fault.
Because nature will do that anyway.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
it will.
You're gonna put the
Mr.
most
River.
perfect stream in there and it's gonna go, no, come over
Come over
here.
here.
Anyway, sorry, I got off topic.
All right,
Interesting, no?
well,
Fun.
it's kind of relevant.
So.
Sorry
Just
about what? Well, I think it's
Yeah,
great.
no, I think. we're
Because
getting there.
what's gonna happen in the real world when you throw this out here is, they're gonna have people like to move, people like to people hurt. And mess around with it. Or, you know, okay, mark this, one or the other.
Pictures, lots of pictures.
Yep.
And you're always gonna get somebody who's mad.
Oh, no, you can't solve.
Now, I'm gonna tell you, Marie, from
Always
the
gonna be that
Supreme Court, pictures are not your code. You still have to have words that refer to the figure, but when you take a court case in front of a superior court, the fact that there's a picture showing what you want, if your words don't say it, they enforce the words, not the photos, not the pictures. So you gotta be very careful to make sure you've got
Right.
matching words, so whichever audience you're working with, the
Right.
visual or the text, you've got both, but that they match,
Right, no, I agree.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but I'm just saying, if you're trying to communicate with people.
Oh,
who
yeah.
Don't have any experience. It's a lot easier to show a picture.
This is what these words mean, the words in the rules. Right?
Somebody take those brownies.
Something.
You got kids, don't you, Tim?
I do.
All right.
Brownie, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have those things.
Got a cruise in a week and a half, so I'm trying to.
Oh, yeah.
Where are you going?
No.
I've got a pair of shorts, it's just a little.
Oh, yeah, it's fine, you can do it, girl. You
5
can
pounds,
do it.
5 more.
do it.
Oh,
East, west to a back-to-back 7 days, so 14 days.
Oh, man, that is
East,
wonderful.
west, through the paddock, no?
No,
Oh,
just,
you're doing Eastern Caribbean,
Yeah.
Western Caribbean. Oh,
No.
nice.
Oh, my goodness.
Sounds terrible.
That's great.
I know,
That's rough.
I'm really stressed out. I'm
Which
looking
one?
forward. We're doing Holland this time for the
Oh.
first time in many years, so
Cool.
we've been doing Princess, but Holland had a good deal, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not that married to you, Princess. You know? You're talking thousands of dollars difference, I can go to somebody else.
Yes.
I've done 2 cruises my whole life, but I was curious what people.
We're planning
I love them.
with my wife's family for next year, and that got pushed now, but I'll come talk to you.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
that's
there you
what I
go.
tell everybody, I'm a nonprofit, cruise consultant, I don't make any money, but I like the planning, so if anybody wants, I know the
Oh, cool.
seasons to go, where to go, what time, when not to go. Yeah, I'll be glad to help you.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Oh, yeah, have my wife reach out to you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that works too. Yeah, there's just, it's not real hard, it's just gotta watch it is all. There's a sweet spot between when the final payment comes due. Okay, so like 90 days out, you have, so if you can do a last minute travel, that is the best time to book is like between 70 and 90 days out from the cruise. Sometimes as close as 30, depends on how it is and what time of year. Because once final payment comes, all those people have been holding all the good rooms with a $25 deposit now have to pony up or get out.
Oh.
So all these rooms open
Yeah,
up,
what did they do?
all these
Oh.
testing the water, not sure you're going. And so the cruise line's
Oh.
flooded with these rooms that aren't booked, so, but as they get to like that 45 day out to sometimes 60 days, that close, they know now those last minute planners that are trying to impress somebody and I wanna throw a last minute trip together, we can scalp you with the prices go right back up. And they go higher than you could have gotten them a year ago. So there's this dip that creates this nice window if you're watching.
So it's between 90 and 45 days.
Yeah, somewhere in there. It depends on the cruise line, where you're going.
Right.
And you don't want to go January, February, although it works great for us. You want to go the week after Thanksgiving and the first week of December is like the cheapest all year round.
Okay.
Because you can't hit see kids in school and
Yeah,
I don't,
nice.
personally, I'm sorry, my kids are grown. I don't want to sail with kids.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'm there to relax.
Right.
Kids are not part of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it works for me because all the kids are back in school, all those families can't go,
Right.
the market's limited.
Yeah.
Sorry, I guess, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
We're still on the record.
Yeah, this is not meeting, planning, so we can continue this. Any objection to leaving the committee of the whole?
No.
Okay, somebody say move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Or any objections?
No.
Okay, we're done.
All right.